We're live here, so I'm just going to check everything and make sure we're good to go on all the appropriate channels. Each one's going to have a little bit of a delay, so we'll see. I am multi-streaming here for the first time to multiple platforms at once, so we're going to see if this indeed does work out the way we want. So people should be joining here on YouTube. It looks like we got some of you already waiting. We just are going live now on uh, Twitch. So that's good. We're up there. And then I need to check YouTube I mean, not YouTube, Facebook real quick. Make sure we're all good to go on all platforms. And then we can get down to business. That's one of the crazy things about being live on multiple platforms at once. It's kind of crazy. Not something that we've been doing a lot of, but since they opened that up on Twitch, it does make it a little easier on us as creators because we're now able to, like for me, an example, I don't have to choose what day to go live on what platform now. I can just go live and then everybody, whether you like to use Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, like you can just watch me on all of them whenever it's available, which is very cool. As opposed to before, I have to like choose and maybe load videos in different places. It just eats up way more time. And we're not live on all the platforms at one time, stuff like that. So this makes things very, very easy. So I'm really into it. Looks like 22 of you are here already on the YouTubes. Got everybody hopping on from different places. So this is great. Everything is working so far. So yay, everything's fantastic. So today what we're going to do, I'm going to be recording in a way that I'm going to be able to turn these into chunks for YouTube. So if my cadence is a little weird at some spots, it's because I'm mentally setting up stuff to make it easier on me for editing. So I didn't just magically turn into a robot at times. So just want that to be clear for everybody. But otherwise, yeah, we're going to talk about some Lost Caverns of Ixalan today. We're going to cover all the rares and all the mythics. I'm not going to do the commons and the uncommons unless there's something specifically that comes up that people want to talk about at the end of each color set. Otherwise, we're going to review these in colors, chop them up, and then we'll have them available on YouTube for everybody to watch if they just are looking for info on certain colors or certain types of cards or whatever. So let's hop to it. We're going to take a look at the white cards first. We're going to go in number order as they are. So this should be fairly easy to follow for those of you at home. We have a lot of people in here. I want to give shout outs real quick before we get going. Hey, Wesley, thank you so much for stopping in this afternoon. LevDev says, set review and watch after Sister's Doggo. Be a nice evening. Hey, always got to love the pets. Robe says, I can't wait to hear your takes on the set. My takes are probably not going to be super spicy. They rarely are. Let's see. Oba says, I'm ready to play Orzhov Vampires. I think a lot of people are. Vampires tend to stay pretty popular. Also, skeleton tribal cards. Typal or kindred cards, if we're going to use that terminology now. We have a big one here. Says, hey, Power Dragon, do you think Rampaging Raptor from March of the Machines could see play in dinosaur decks? So that's I can't answer that yet. Like asking us to speculate on things, like I will give you my roundabout opinions on new cards, and then that's kind of the best I can do for you because we can't predict the future. So just keep an eye out on decks because I'm sure I'll have a couple of different dinosaur decks along the way, and that's probably the best I could tell you. But okay, looks like everybody is engaging here. Looks like everybody's all good from all the different platforms. So welcome, everybody. Let's talk about some Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So we're going to start with Abuelo's Awakening, which is funny because isn't Abuelo like grandmother, grandparent, grandfather? I guess Abuelo in Spanish. So it's actually an interesting name. But anyway, this is X, 3 and a white for a sorcery. Return target artifact or non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield with X additional +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. Wow, this is a weird card. Return target artifact or non-aura enchantment. So you can't return a creature. You're returning an artifact or an enchantment, but it's a 1/1 creature with however many counters you spend on it. This is a weird card. I don't know, like it's playable for sure. Because even if you just do it for 4 and you just get an enchantment or artifact back into play, it's just a 1/1 version of itself. So like that's still fine. It's just a weird card. I don't I don't know how I feel about this. Like you can play it in the blue, white, blue, like the Just Guy decks that are already trying to reanimate a bunch of silliness, like the what is it? The blue enchantment that lets you play something for free and look at the top of the library and play for free. Like you can get that back. You can get Portal back. So like there's some good stuff you could do with this. It probably goes into that deck, which already has a lot of tools. So I don't know if it needs this card or not, but it's kind of neat. You know, I don't know where it's going to go at the end, but it's a cool card. I'm not going to hate it. What's the next rare we have in white? We have wow, there's a lot of commons and uncommons before you get to the next rare. Oh, I need to look up the pronunciation on this because it's not Oare. I saw this. Somebody had a pronunciation guide. I'm gonna try to get it right after I get done with the set review because I should have brought that up and had it on camera and available. But there is somebody on Twitter that actually has been, you know what? Matter of fact, I talked about this on my podcast and I bet you it's in my show notes. I'm gonna go check that out first so I get this right. I want to be a better human if I can be. I want to get this pronunciation right. So let me go in here to my latest episode, by the way. Color of Magic. If you don't know about it, check it out wherever you download stuff for podcasts. It's a pretty good show, at least I think so, and that's what people tell me. So I'm gonna believe them. I don't have it there. I'm gonna have to go into my other show notes. That's disappointing. Sidetrack. But I'll bring it up on camera so y'all can see it too, because I think this is actually something worth talking about. Because somebody took the time to actually do this and make it easier on everybody to pronounce a lot of the stuff from the set, because a lot of stuff's going to be very strange. A lot of us don't speak the language that it's based on, and I think that's actually just a cool exercise. All right, here we go. I can pull up this link, and then I can show it to y'all. All right. Let me do a quick snap of this, and then I will make an image that I can share, because technology lets us do some fun stuff in real time. Here we go. And I just have to save that real quick. Boom, boom. Put that in my downloads. All right. And then I believe I can do this here. Or at least I should be able to. Let me see. Add an image. Yep, sure can. All right. Let me do this so y'all can actually see what I'm talking about, because I was about to pronounce this card wrong and I know it's not correct. All right, so here's this thing. It is Oare is actually how it's pronounced. I was definitely going to say that incorrectly. But yeah, so if y'all didn't know about this, this is I want to give credit to the person. The guy goes by Logan A. Dixon 1, the number 1, on Twitter. But he put this up as something he kind of put together for some of the more complicated names and stuff. So if you didn't know how stuff is pronounced, this is how they're pronounced. So now everybody knows. So it's just a cool thing. I think is neat to have available that people can just be aware of and know is a thing. If you don't know, there it is. I may make a short about this as well, so people have access to it. I'll just put it up, make it available. But I think this is actually really cool. So yeah, Oare is how we're pronouncing this card. I will keep this handy, and we can just bring it up throughout the stream as we need it, I guess. But Oare, Taj, Deepest Foundation, 4 white for a 6/6 legendary creature god, vigilance. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, 3 times that many of those tokens are created instead. When this card dies, return to the battlefield transformed, and it turns into Temple of Civilization. Tap 4 white, or you can tap 3 and tap it. Transform it. Activate only if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn, only as a sorcery. So it really just taps for mana, and then if you attack with 3 things, it turns back into this. Okay, so first things first. It's 6 mana, so it's a little bit slow, but not terrible. We play a lot of cards that are 6, 7, and 8 mana now in standard. So 6 mana, still playable, but expensive. It does have vigilance, which is very cool. It has a really great token multiplying ability. So this is pretty exciting with a lot of different cards that make tokens right now. You can even play what's his name from the Phyrexian dude that like gives you an extra token, and then this would give you 3 times that for each one, which is kind of funny. So that's a thing. I mean, this is a card that I expect is going to be expensive because anything that gives you extra tokens or extra counters tends to be expensive in Magic. I mean, desirable dollar wise, whatever down the road. I think this is one of those things that's always going to be sought after, especially for like certain commander decks and stuff. Standard wise, I feel like even if I'm playing a token build, I may be playing one, maybe. Like, I could see a world where you have a deck that plays like 2 Mondrak and one of these, maybe, and that would make a lot of sense. But that's probably it. Unless I take that back. If there's some way you can ramp and make tokens, then I could see where you play a couple of copies of this, because then getting to 6 mana won't be that big of a deal, and then you make a bunch of tokens behind it. The thing is, though, it doesn't have any type of protective abilities. It doesn't have like hexproof protection, nothing like that. And it has to die to return to the battlefield as its other side. So all the exile effects, just get rid of it. Sadly, like many things, we just have too many exile effects right now. But, you know, still a decent card. Going down the list, what else do we have in white? We have, Resplendent Angel. Colorless white for a 3/3 angel. At the beginning of each instep, if you gain 5 or more life, create a 4/4 white angel token with flying and vigilance, or you can pay 6. And until end of turn, Resplendent Angel gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink. This card's been around before. It wasn't spectacular the first time it was around, but it did have some fringe playability. I could see where this card gets more play now because we do actually have still a reasonable number of angels available in standard. And this card actually benefits from there being a long standard, right? Before, if this was just 2-year standard, we would have lost some of the cards that you could play alongside this. But because we get access to a bunch of other angels, this could be played. Now, that being said, not a lot of those angels gain life. So I'm not sure if this goes into those builds. So maybe this is the type of card that just goes into some other type of life gain builds that aren't really playing a bunch of angels. So this one, I think if it finds a home, you're gonna have to take a little work to build the deck where this fits. Because I mean, you could play like Lunarch Veterans and the other thing that gets tokens when you gain life, and you know, there's things that you can gain life with and make this okay. So I wouldn't turn my nose up at this card, but I don't think it's necessarily a superstar right off the bat. However, there are other angels you can play with it. So if you can find some balance between angels and life gain, maybe this could find a home, but I wouldn't rate it real high. Not one I would be rushing out to buy or craft right off the bat. What else do we got here? Our first vampire, Sanguine Evangelist. 3 mana for a 2/1 vampire cleric with battle cry. Whenever you attack, attacking creatures get +1/+0 is what battle cry is. And when it enters the battlefield or dies, create a 1/1 bat creature flying token. This card's really good. This card's like really, really good. Like for 3 mana, you're getting a 2/1 and a 1/1 no matter what, right? Because it's when and it dies, you might get another 1/1. And it's not one of those things where like this creature can't block or nothing. It's just a straight up flying token, which is cool. And then when you attack, everything else gets a +1/+0. So like this is cool. I got no problem with this card. Like if I'm assuming if you're going to be playing vampires, whether it's white, red, black, white, red, whatever, you're going to have some number of like 1 and 2 mana things already on the battlefield. Then you play this and make another token. And then now on turn 4, you're getting to attack for a lot of damage potentially. Like this is, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this card at all. It's fine. Thumbs up. If you're playing vampires, you're probably going to be considering this. Like having a card that gives you an extra blocker or attacker and gives you another one when it dies, that's really good. Like even if you never get to trigger the battle cry ability, 3 mana for potentially, what's that, a 2/1, a 1/1, and a 1/1? So like that seems really good. That's really good. This is fun because I haven't looked at most of these cards yet. So this is like my first experience with a lot of these. Actually, I skipped one. I skipped one. There's a couple that I skipped, actually. This one. All right. Thousand Moon Smithy. 2 colorless, white for a legendary artifact, and a bunch of words here. When it enters the battlefield, create a white gnome soldier artifact creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of artifacts and or creatures you control. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may tap up to 5 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control. If you do, you transform the smithy, and it becomes another land that taps for a white, Barracks of the Thousand. When you cast an artifact or creature spell using mana produced by this, create a white gnome soldier artifact creature token with this creature's power and toughness, each equal to the number of artifacts or creatures you control. Yeah, the words artifacts or creatures you control appear a lot on this card. Okay, so lots to say about this. This is pretty cool if you're playing just a go wide creature deck, obviously. It produces a creature on its own, which is nice, right? Because this is when it enters the battlefield, so that's cool. You can tap extra creatures to produce an extra body. That's cool. Or actually to flip it, not necessarily to create an extra body. But on the backside, every time you play an artifact or creature, you actually end up getting another token. What's interesting about this card, now that I'm thinking about it, is this could work in a deck that doesn't actually play creatures, right? Like you could play some type of control or mid-rangey type deck that is just playing artifacts and then using this and something else, right? Or anything that triggers off artifacts coming into play or whatever. Or even a vehicles type deck, right? And then tapping your vehicles to make and flip the backside of this. And now you're just making tokens every time you play a vehicle. So yeah, this is going to find a home somewhere. I don't know if it'd be like top tier, but it's definitely a pretty versatile card that even once the board is swept, if you already have this flipped into a land, then every time you play something, you're getting an extra body, which is pretty cool when you're trying to dodge all the like exile removal or whatever, right? Like you still have a land that's okay, cool. The next thing I play is making a body. The next thing I play is making a body. And then each of those bodies is getting bigger. So yeah, this is actually a pretty sweet card. I'll definitely be looking to do something with this. Let's see. What else do we have here? There's a lot of interesting artifacts, it looks like. Okay, Unstable Glyph Bridge. 3 colorless, white. It's an artifact. It enters the battlefield. If you cast it, for each player, choose a creature with power 2 or less that player controls, then destroy all other creatures except the creatures chosen this way. Wow. Then you can craft with artifacts, and that means you can pay 5, exile this artifact, exile another artifact you control, or an artifact from your graveyard, and then return this card transformed to the backside, which is Swirling Sand Swirl Wanderglyph, a 5/3 flying artifact golem. Whenever an opponent casts a spell during their turn, they can't attack you. Oh wait, what is this? Whenever opponent casts a spell during their turn, they can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Each opponent who attacked you or a planeswalker you control can't cast spells. Oh, I think we've had a card like this before, actually. So if they play a spell, they can't attack you. If they attack you, they can't play spells. All right, that's interesting. Yeah, here's my problem with this card. We just need to take a set off from making board sweepers. Seriously. Like, if we're going to have 3-year standard, we don't need a board sweeper in every single set. Like, I mean that genuinely. Like, the fact that we have so many of every variety that deal damage, give negatives, exile things, get rid of graveyards, blah, blah. Like, we have all these different types of sweeper. We don't need it. Like, this card just did not need to exist. Seriously. It just didn't. Like, I don't understand why we made this card. I mean, I guess if you're playing an artifact type deck and you need a sweeper, and maybe you're playing it with the other artifact we just talked about, sure, I guess that's a thing, but I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know. I'm not excited about this card. Does it have a place? Probably. Like, this will show up somewhere. But yeah, I am not excited to play this. I don't know. Like, here's the other thing too, because we're playing 3-year standard. I don't know if this card gets as much play as it possibly would in say like a 2-year standard, because we still have stuff like Sunfall and Farewell and whatever all available right now. Right? Like, it's just not going to get played as much. But I will say it's at least an interesting design, but I'm not excited about it. Let's see. What do we got left in white? We have Warden of the Inner Sky. This is a 1 mana, 1/2. As long as Warden of the Inner Sky has 3 or more counters on it, it has flying and vigilance. It's a human soldier. Tap 3 untapped artifacts and/or creatures you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on this card, and scry activate as a sorcery. Huh. I kind of sort of want to be excited about this. Like a card that could fairly easily get flying and vigilance if you're putting counters on it. You can tap 3 things to put a counter. The problem is you can only put the counter on at sorcery speed. I think that's my problem with this card, especially with the level of removal we have available now. To have to commit some number of creatures or artifacts on your turn to put a +1/+1 on this, just to have it possibly die to instant speed removal, like, not a fan of that. This card reads really cool. Being a human, being a soldier, like, it feels like it's got the right words, but I would have to really think about this if I were put, like, because I don't even know if I'd even put this in the +1/+1 counter deck, right? Because there's just better things at 1 and 2 mana you want to play, and you definitely don't want to take a turn off to tap. Hell, sometimes you don't even have 3 extra creatures, right? Or 2 extra creatures and this to tap, right? You need to be getting your attacks in. So yeah, I'm probably not with this. I'm just not great. Like, is there anything cool we could do with it? I'm trying to think of like what world are we just putting? I mean, I guess you could put non +1/+1 counters on, but there's nothing that even like puts that on there. I mean, I guess I'm like trying to think of something like the enchantment auras count as counters? Like that's a thing, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling this card. I'm not like I said, it has a lot of the right words that almost make me excited about it. This is one I would love to be wrong about because it's a 1/2 for 1. It'll survive a few things, but it just feels like it takes so much work to turn this into a reasonable card where you can already play other 1 mana things that are triggering off of other things happening already, right? Like you have Wormlet, you've got the green guy that gets a +1/+1 every time, or gets the whatever we call those counters. There's a bunch of different ones, but it gets bigger every time you play a creature that's larger than it, right? Like you can play a bunch of that type of stuff instead of playing this card. So like I'm not into it. Not into it. All right, I think those are all the rares and mythics in white. So we are going to proceed to the blue cards. Moving to wow, not okay. Here we go. All right, so on to the blue cards. We have the Enigma Jewel, 1 blue mana, enters the battlefield tap. You can tap it to add 2 colorless, spend it only to activate abilities. This seems kind of good already. You can craft it with 4 or more non-lands with activated abilities. That's a very peculiar wording. Craft with 4 or more non-lands that have an activated ability for 9. So the backside of this better be great. So you can pay 9, exile this artifact, exile 4 or more from among other permanents you control or in your graveyard. Then you return this transformed under its owner's control, which is Locus of Enlightenment. Locus of Enlightenment has each activated ability of the exiled cards you use to craft it. You can activate each of those abilities only once each turn. Whenever you activate one that isn't a mana ability, you copy it, and you can choose new targets. Oh man, that's a lot. That's a lot to absorb on this card. The backside's pretty cool. I mean, if you're activating abilities and then you copy them, that's obviously really strong. They're not can't copy mana abilities. So that's a thing. You're needing an additional, let's see, you paid 1 to play it. You can tap itself for 2. So you need 6 extra, or yeah, 6 extra mana from somewhere to flip this to the backside, and have to have some number of cards available that have activated abilities. Ugh. I'm sure somebody's going to find something to do with this, but this feels like a lot. This feels like a lot. Because, like, you have to play it. You have to. I mean, late game, I guess if you top deck it, it could be kind of cool. If you already have other. Well, it has to be non-lands that are with activated abilities. So, not even that. Like, yeah, I'm not. This feels like in Commander, I could do some sweet stuff. I feel like in Standard, I'm going to have to work really hard to make this work, if it's even possible. Yeah, this is. Oof. Oof. This feels like a lot. This was like a lot. This is another one, like, if you figure out what to do with it, you're probably gonna do some really cool things. But my problem is you put in all this work to get to the backside, and this doesn't even have like it, they could just kill this, right? Like you go through all this work to play it or to flip it, and then I don't know, it gets hit with Terra Sunder or something silly, right? Like that would be the tough part about this card. And you can only craft as a sorcery. Wait a minute. On top of it. Yeah, that's too much. That's too much. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm out on this card. What do we have next? Let's see. Oh, right next to it. The Ever-Flowing Well. More artifacts. 2 colorless and a blue. Legendary artifact. When the Ever-Flowing Well enters a battlefield, mill 2 cards, then draw 2. That's not bad. Descend to 8 at the beginning of your upkeep. If there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, transform Ever-Flowing Well, which isn't that hard to do. And the backside is taps for mana as the Myriad Pools, and whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by Myriad Pools, up to 1 other target permanent you control becomes a copy of that spell until end of turn. That's pretty cool. This one I actually like. It's not going to be that hard to get 8 cards into your graveyard. That's very doable with a bunch of different ways. And then this just lets you copy. It doesn't even let you copy. It turns something else into a copy of whatever you're casting. That's kind of neat. I sort of like this card. Like this is we can do some stuff with this. Like this, man, what was that enchantment? The blue enchantment that like it copied stuff as you played it or whatever, right? That everybody, it's like costs like 5 mana or something that everybody keeps wanting all of us to build decks with, and it just doesn't work out most of the time. Like this is cool because now you just like if you have a thing that comes into play and I don't know, does something. Well, I guess if the ETBs, it wouldn't do any good because the other thing's already in play. So you would want stuff that just maybe you get a bigger creature. Now your 1/1's a bigger creature, or maybe you have something that gives all your creatures a bonus, and now you have 2 things that do it. So, like, yeah, I think this will take some thought to figure out, like, what things are we trying to copy? But I like the card. I think this actually allows quite a few things to happen. Actually, you know what? You know what? This could be good for the self-mill deck, actually, because the backside could let you turn any of your little 1/1s or 2/1s that you're using for mana or whatever at different points into Lurgoyfs, into Somnophages. You know, like you could do a lot of good stuff with this in that type of build. This is a pretty sweet card, actually. All right, moving on. What do we got next? All right, we have Kitesell Larsonist. 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/3 flying ward 1. When Kitesell Larsonist enters the battlefield, for each player, choose up to 1 other target artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as Kitesell Larsonist remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents become treasure artifacts with tap, sacrifice this card, add 1 mana, just like a treasure, and loses all other abilities. This card's probably going to get some play. It is a pirate. We know people are going to be playing pirates. We've seen a lot of artifacts already. I'm sure there's a bunch more we're going to talk about in these set reviews. And this getting to turn some stuff off is just really good. Like, just on its own, being able to turn stuff off is pretty powerful. And in Commander as well, you get to do this for each player, which is also very cool. And it's not even, and it's, each other player, you choose target artifact or creature. Man, being able to turn off creatures too is really strong. Like, this card has to see some amount of play. I'm going to be really surprised if this card doesn't get played, because this is a pretty good, and it's a 2/3 flyer that's hard to kill on its own. So yeah, this is a pretty cool card. I like it. All right, we have Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel. Colorless and a blue for 2/1 flash flyer. It's a legendary creature, Siren Pirate. Whenever Malcolm enters or deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it. Draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 4 or more chorus counters on Malcolm, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost. This is just cool. If you're playing a pirate deck, I mean, this is kind of straightforward. You get a 2/1 flyer with flash, which is always cool. I mean, on rate, it's great. And then when it connects, if you have 4 counters on it, you just get to play stuff for free. Not a lot to really say about this card. I don't know if you play a lot of them. Like, if you're playing pirates, you maybe put 2 of in the deck since it's legendary, maybe even 3. But yeah, just a card your opponent has to deal with after a point, because they don't want to just let it connect multiple times and then be worried about you getting free stuff every turn. So yeah, cool card. This was actually, I feel like this is the most straightforward card we've had so far to talk about. Like, you play the creature, it does a thing, you get the counters, you get free things. Awesome, right? Like, nice and simple. Let's see. As we learned earlier from our pronunciation guide, Oare is the term. Oare. Now, I'm going to butcher this name here. What is it? Pakpatik is probably how it's pronounced with the hard Q. Deepest Epic. So you've got 2 colorless, blue for 4/3 legendary creature god with flying. Whenever you cast an instant spell from your hand, it gains rebound. Rebound is whenever you exile this card as it resolves. At the beginning of its upkeep, you can cast it again without paying its mana cost. When this card dies, return to the battlefield tapped, transformed under its owner's control, which is Temple of Cyclical Time. Tap it, make a blue, and remove a time counter from the temple. Pay 3 and tap it. Transform it to the backside only if it has no time counters on it. Oh, we're adding time counters from the front. Did I miss that part? Oh, with 3 time counters on it. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. So this is just use it to make blue and remove counters, and then it eventually flips to the backside. Probably the easiest of them to flip, I would imagine, because this is just like use it as you would use it, and then it eventually goes to its front side. But you do have to flip it as a sorcery, not as an instant. So that is the downside to several of these things that transform. A lot of them seem to say transform as a sorcery, whether that's forwards or backwards. That does add a level of complication because you have to dedicate your mana or your action on your turn, as opposed to waiting to see what plays out, or if your opponent sweeps your board or whatever else. Because here now you're like, you could flip it back to the front, but now you're making it susceptible to, say, like a Sunfall or something with additional mana down. So the card itself seems pretty sweet, though. The fact that all your stuff gets rebound is actually really damn cool, especially if you're playing this in some type of blue-green aggro-y type deck where you're playing like Giant Gross and whatever. I mean, there's probably other cards you're playing, but just that as an example is just like, okay, the next turn, all of these things that I played get to trigger again, and that could end up being a lot of damage with just free spells. So yeah, I'm into it. This is actually pretty cool. Also, you could bounce something, right? From your hand. Yeah, so you bounce something on your opponent's turn, then on your turn, you get to bounce a thing again. That's actually pretty cool too. So lots of applications for the ability here. This is actually pretty cool. I'm kind of into this. This is neat. What else do we got? Let's go to Subterranean Schooner. Or maybe that's Schooner. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I've never seen that. It's obviously a type of ship. Colorless and a blue for a 3/4. Whenever it attacks, target creature that crewed it explores, and it crews for 1. That's actually a pretty reasonable card, honestly. Like, if you're playing something with Explore, this is fine. If you just want a reasonable body that might sit around after a sweeper, this is fine. It crews for 1, so in pretty much any token you make can crew it. It's a 3/4, which is nice. Even if you play it as a blocker early on, right? Like, you play it, it sits there with another creature. You turn this into a 3/4, you block with it. That's fine. Yeah, and it has some pretty epic looking art, honestly, like an old pirate ship that's got like a big wave coming over it. Like, I like this card. I don't know how good it's going to be, or if you even want it in particularly the Explore deck. Maybe there's some other type of deck that's just playing vehicles or tokens or whatever that wants this, and just exploring as a bonus. But it's a pretty fair costed card. Like, we don't really play a lot of vehicles these days, but this is one that's actually well costed for the size of the creature you turn it into. It has a very low crew cost, obviously, of just 1, and it has an upside additional ability that could be growing a creature, filtering your draws, whatever. So yeah, this is a neat card. I don't know how often we're going to play it, but it's pretty neat. I'm also being told in chat this is pronounced Schooner. So there you go. Credit where it's due. So it's pronounced Schooner. So there you go. We're learning a lot of things on this stream. So this is actually pretty sweet. All right. Next up, we have Tashana's Tidebinder. 3 mana for a 3/2 Merfolk Wizard with Flash. So far, so good. When it enters the battlefield, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If any ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as this card is on the battlefield. Wow. Yeah, this card's good. Like, it's a 3 mana 3/2 with Flash. So already solid, right? And then you can just turn off any activated or triggered ability. So pretty much any ability that's in play, you could turn it off. And then they don't happen for as long as this card is in play. This means, like, let's say you're going to attack, your opponent flashes in a Wandering Emperor, right? And they're going to exile a creature. And you're like, nah, I'd rather not. Let's just make sure this doesn't work. And now your Wandering Emperor does nothing until you get rid of this Tidebinder. Like, this is a really good card, especially with all these artifacts that are flipping and doing all this stuff. Like, you just turn those off if you want to. Like, this is really cool. It doesn't affect lands, which is nice, but yeah, artifact creatures or planeswalkers. This is cool. This is a good card. I don't even know if I'm going to be playing a lot of Merfolk, but this card, like, I would argue that this card is good enough that some non-Merfolk decks are probably going to play this card, even if it's just as a sideboard, right? If you're playing against a deck that has 2 or 3 good cards with activated abilities that are going to annoy you, like, great. You can go ahead and play this card as a sideboard option, and then now you can turn off a bunch of things your opponent's playing. Like, this is a good card. Yeah, this is really good. Like, I can think of a lot of situations where this card's spectacular. Big Bone says rip Shieldred, and it works on Shieldred as well, right? When Shieldred goes to trigger to have you lose life, play this, turn off Shieldred. Now Shieldred, you don't have to worry about that effect, any effects on it, right? Yeah, loses all abilities. So it's just, actually, it even loses Death Touch because it loses all abilities. So now Shieldred's just a 4/5, just sitting there. So this is actually pretty sweet. I'm about this card. This is pretty cool. I'm about it. Yeah, big fan. Big fan. Question is just a thought. What would happen if you hit something that was in the graveyard or hand? Well, it says lose all abilities for as long as this card is on the battlefield. I think it would still turn it off. If it was in hand, it wouldn't, because that wouldn't matter, I don't think. But in the graveyard, you should still be able to turn it off. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that would be correct. And is that the last blue card to talk about here? I think it is. All right, so that covers all of the blue cards. We're gonna make our way to the black cards now. So, Need to set up a new recording there so I can have the black card separated for easy editing purposes. All right. On to the black card. I don't know. Was this card on our pronunciation sheet? It was. So, oh, this is exactly how I would have pronounced it. Aquazots. Aquazots. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Okay, cool. I guess there's people, you found it Aquazots or something. Somebody might have done that. But yeah, Aquazots. Deepest Betrayal. It is a 5 mana, 4/4 legendary bat god. That's actually a random combination. A bat god. All right. Flying and lifelink. So not bad for 5 mana. When it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, create a 1/1 bat flying creature token. When this dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed as Temple of the Dead. It taps for a black. You can pay 3, transform Temple of the Dead, activate only if a player has 1 or fewer cards in hand. And yeah, this card's solid. Like, this is the type of card we've been wanting to play in various discard decks, right? Because you didn't really have an upper end. You were kind of just playing one of the Shieldrids or something, or one of the Planeswalkers like a Ashiok or whatever. I mean, I have a deck I was thinking about putting up soon, the next couple days. That's going to be a discard deck. This is the type of card that would be great in there as your upper end, right? Because one, it's just a sizable body. I mean, 4/4 flying, lifelink, great. If it connects, now your opponent has a discard an extra card. If you've already kept their hand low, well, then you're getting to draw a card. And then if for some reason this dies, it comes back as a thing that very likely is going to transform back to being a bat because your opponent's going to have 1 or fewer cards in hand. So yeah, I like this. This card's actually really, really sweet. I'm into it. I could see this being played a lot. Hello, Carlos. Welcome to the chat. We also have Delaney says, I like the sub theme in the set of finding lands in hands, graveyards, etc. only on meta theme. Yeah, they're doing a lot of interesting things with the set for sure. I think there's going to be a lot to build around in a lot of different ways than what we're doing right now. And that's always a bonus, right? We get to see more cards, more decks, more variety of strategies. Like, nothing to be upset at with that at all. Like, big fans of what this set is bringing to the table for sure. All right, on to the next black card. We have Bloodletter of Aquazots. So this goes with the other card, I assume. This is a weird cost. Colorless black for a vampire demon 2/4. Not excited to pay that for a 2/4 creature, so I hope this is a huge ability. If an opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that. Okay, that's a good ability. They lose twice that much instead. Oh boy. If they would lose life during your turn. I mean, it is tough, right? It's 4 mana for a 2/4 flyer, which isn't great. It dies to a lot of stuff, especially if you're blocking. But man, your opponent losing twice that much life. That's big. I don't know how, like, I'm going to lose to this card. like, I don't know how, but anything that's making you lose twice as much life, like, and even crazier, like if there's 2 of these in play, you lose twice the first amount. And I'm assuming then the other one would trigger and your opponent already lost life. So then they would lose double that amount. So that's even crazier. Yeah, this is. No, they would both trigger at the same time. So if they lost 3, you would just lose 6 twice, I think. Either way, this card's crazy. This card's like, this is the type of card you like to see, right? Because it's hard to cast, because it's 3 colored mana in the cost. So you can't just splash it easily. It's a somewhat fragile card because it doesn't deal a lot of damage itself. But 4 toughness is nothing to turn your nose up at, right? It can at least block some stuff. But if it sticks, you might kill your opponent on the next turn. You know what I mean? Like if you have like a couple of burn spells and then you attack, your opponent could just be dead. Like seriously. Like this is a cool card. I don't know how much I'm going to play it, but it's a type of card that once your opponent has it on the battlefield, you are automatically concerned if there's more than say like 1 or 2 cards in their hand. Like this becomes a real problem. Like I'm I'm into it. I like this type of card. It's kind of a really low floor, but it has a really high ceiling, right? So it's a bit of a gamble to play it, but the payoff is going to be huge. All right. So far, the black cards have been pretty exciting. I'm digging this. What else do we have? Are all of these commons and uncommons so far? Oh no, there's one. I skipped one. I skipped two actually. I'm just being bad at this. All right. Bringer of the Last Gift. 8 mana. So 6 black for a 6/6 flying vampire demon. Lots of demons in this set. When Bringer of the Last Gift enters a battlefield, if you cast it, so you can't just put it into play, each player sacrifices all other creatures they control. Then each player returns all creature cards from the graveyard that weren't. Oh, okay, so this is like a living death on a creature. Living death. All right. So it comes into play. All the current creatures go to the graveyard. Everything in the graveyard comes into play. Man, 8 mana for a 6/6, and it only works if you cast it. Ooh, boy. Yeah. Like, I feel like there's some trick to this, but it feels like it takes a lot of work. A lot of work. I think any deck where you already are playing Living Death in commander type settings, you probably would play this as just like redundancy for that, because we only have, I think, 3 or 4 cards in Magic that have this type or similar ability. So, I mean, you can play it for redundancy there. I don't think this is going to get played much, if ever, in 60 card formats, unless a creator, streamer, whatever, just building around it for the sake of making a deck. But as far as being a regular thing you see, probably not. It's just a lot of mana. Like, because think about this, right? You could play this for 8 mana, or you could cast like Breach the Multiverse, or I don't know, Atali or something or whatever, right? And just try to steal the game away right then and there. So like there's just better things we could do with that much mana. And even if you want a sweeper, there's other variations of sweepers you can play. So like, yeah, just not my jam. Kind of weird looking art too. Not a huge fan. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. This thing has like bat wings that have dinosaur faces on them. It's like, I guess it's resurrecting the dinosaur bones or something. But yeah, kind of weird. I don't as much as I've been enjoying the black deck so far, not really feeling this too much. You're saying domain. Yeah, I don't think domain decks really want that either, because you're just playing Atraxas and stuff. Like, you just have bigger, better cards you can play more consistently. So yeah, probably not there either. Corpses of the Lost. 2 colorless and a black. Skeletons you control get +1/+0 and have haste. When this card enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 skeleton pirate. And at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, which is putting cards into your graveyard, you may pay 1 life. If you do, return this card to your hand. Huh. All right. So, you can bounce this every turn effectively to get a 1. Like, I mean, this is all right. The problem here is, 1, I'd have to search and see how many other playable, like truly playable skeletons we have, first off, right? Or things that can turn stuff into skeletons. I think that would be my first start here with this card. But the problem is the fact that you have to replay it every turn to effectively get a 3/2 with haste is okay, but not great. It doesn't feel like. Like, the fact that I have to, like, each time you bounce it, it's now susceptible to counters and other stuff or whatever too, right? So you're going to have to make some decisions where you just don't pay the life and it just stays in play, which is why I'm saying, are there better skeletons we can really play? Because if not, then this is just all right. Like, now, if I'm on the side of playing some weird mid-rangey control, whatever, and then I have extra life and I'm just going to pay extra turn to make a zombie or a skeleton every turn, then like maybe that type of build probably works. But as an actual, like, the creature deck that wants to be doing this, probably not. This feels like, for as much as people are going to want to put this into an aggressive type build with skeletons, I don't think that's what you're trying to do with this card. This doesn't read like those decks don't want to be casting the same card over and over just to get a 3/2. You know what I mean? For 3 mana. That's not what you want to do with those builds. Now, I will say this. I do like it in a sense of it's something to do against those decks that are just constantly sweeping the board, right? Like your opponent's just like, all right, I'm going to Sunfall. And you're like, okay, fine. I'll at least return this and play another thing. And I can just keep generating creatures. And that's kind of cool. So I like it in that regard. So maybe it's the type of card that if I am playing some aggro-y type deck, I'm playing just 1 or 2 of these as a way to just constantly generate stuff, as opposed to the deck is a skeleton deck. You know what I mean? Probably not what you want to be, but like it's not bad to have as a backup plan. Because you know, how many times have you played against a deck that's playing a bunch of sweepers and you don't want to commit a bunch of stuff to the battlefield, right? You know, like I don't want to waste other cards. But if I could just cast this every turn and keep adding 3 power to the board, then this becomes somewhat of a tenable plan. Now, admittedly, you still have to find a way to get a permanent into your graveyard so you can pay the 1 life, but there's lots of ways you can do that. So yeah, I give this like a mid. Like I'm not giving it a complete thumbs up. I'm giving it like a 60% thumbs up. Not even halfway. It's more than halfway, but I don't think it's the card a lot of people want this card to be, I think. All right. Moving on to more black cards. What else do we got here? We have lots of interesting commons and uncommons, but here we go. Souls of the Lost. This is a creepy looking card. What is even going on with that art? Like some tribal mass with like magic stuff coming out of them, like glyphs or something. Colorless and a black for a spirit creature. Then, in addition to casting the spell, you discard a card or sacrifice a permanent. Souls of the Lost has power equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. Huh. So it is a spirit. I don't know how relevant that is. It's only 2 mana, which is kind of nice. You can discard a card. You can discard a card to make sure it has some power and toughness. But playing it early, it's only going to be like a 1/2. This is the card that wants to be in a Descend deck, right? If somebody's building around that mechanic and you're constantly putting a bunch of stuff in the yard, you're self-milling, doing all that, this is exactly where this card wants to be. Like the self-mill type decks want this type of card. Like, you know, playing this and then on the next turn having this card be a 3/4 or something for 2 mana is kind of sweet. And then it just gets bigger as the game goes on. So like, all right, like it's a neat card, but in a very specific type of deck, right? Only maybe even a handful of decks are even going to consider playing this card. The ones that will play it will probably like the card, but beyond that, I don't know. So this is a weird one where if you're playing the type of deck it works for, you're going to love having this card in your deck. But it's not one that if you're building some type of Golgari aggro or mid-range or, you know, mono black aggro or whatever, you're not looking at this card. It's just not what you're looking to do. Cool card, though. I do think the card is interesting. Stalactite Stalker. That is a cool name. It's a 1/1 for 1. All right. It's a Goblin Rogue. Menace. Not bad. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on the Stalker. You can pay 3, sacrifice the Stalker. Target creature gets -X/-X till in a turn where X is this card's power. You know what? I kind of like this card. Like, okay, so first off, we don't have a lot of good 1 mana early creatures for black right now. It's kind of like, what is it, Evolve Sleeper? And I think that's it. There's really not much that we're playing. This also is a goblin. So then there already are some goblin things going around. So that's an option. It has Menace, so it's hard to block. This is pretty cool. Probably is going to be fairly easy to get a 1/1 counter on this, at least every other turn or so, if not every turn, depending. And then doesn't have to be used as a sorcery, thankfully. You can instant speed use this to kill something, possibly, which could trigger another Stalker if you have one in play. So yeah, this card's good. This card's good. Stalactite Stalker. Cool name. I'm into this. I think this is a neat card. I'm giving this one a thumbs up. Next up, we have Starving Revenant. 2 colorless black for a 4/4 spirit horror. When Starving Revenant enters the battlefield, surveil 2. Then for each card you put on top of your library, you draw a card and you lose 3 life. Oh, interesting. So if you like the cards enough, you get them right then, but then you lose 3 life. And then if you have 8 cards in your graveyard, or 8 permanents, I think it is, in your graveyard, whenever you draw a card, if there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard, well, there you go. Target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Interesting. So part of it is it kind of wants to surveil and have you put cards in the graveyard so you can get to the 8. So then the next time you draw, your opponent's losing and you're gaining. But even if not, you can just get cards immediately and lose 3 life. Oh, this is such a weird card, but I kind of like it. Like, because it is a 4/4 for 4, so already reasonable for the size. But there are a few decks where this might just fit, right? You could be doing the Descend type stuff. You could be doing self-mill stuff. You could be... Actually, this might even go into the draw 2 type decks, right? Because now you're also draining your opponent for an additional point of life, potentially. Or whenever it just comes into play, you'll get to draw anyway for the cost of 3 life, but you'll be gaining life from some of your other cards, so you don't really care. So yeah, this might be a cool piece for the draw 2 deck, honestly. This card's pretty sweet. I like this card. I'm into this. I mean, Atheist God Dragon says, good with Rowan. Probably. The problem is Rowan herself just ain't spectacular. That's the problem. Because, like, even if you play this after playing Rowan and you get your cards, like, you lost life, but how much extra mana do you have left, right? You played Rowan the turn before, you play this the turn after. You don't even have mana left over to get that discounted cost. So, I mean, I built a deck with Rowan, and I'll probably go back to that at some point and experiment with cards like this, but I don't know what the impact is I would expect realistically. Would I throw... Oh, wait. It says, would I throw this into... Oh, probably throw this into your Golgari Titania deck. Maybe. I mean, that's a place it could work. I mean, it at least fits. I mean, putting stuff in the graveyard, so it's all good. He's on Twitch. Yeah, I'm on a lot of places at one time right now. All right. Other black cards. We have Tarian's Journal, colorless and a black. Legendary artifact. Tap, sacrifice another artifact or creature. Draw a card, activate only as a sorcery. Tap it and pay 2, discard your hand, and you transform it. Oh boy, what's the backside? Taps for a black, or you can cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. If you do, it enters the battlefield with a finality counter on it and is a vampire in addition to its other types. Ooh. This is interesting. So you can sacrifice something to draw a card, or you can discard your hand and then play stuff out of the graveyard. Here's the problem with this card, though, is again, we just have a lot of stuff that exiles things. Exiles things in play, exiles things from your graveyard. So there's a realistic chance there's not even anything in your graveyard to use with the card, right? Or there could be, but just not a lot of options. Being able to sacrifice something to draw a card seems cool, but it's limited to a sorcery. So you can't even respond. Like, if it was instant speed, that would be great, because then you could either choose to use it during your opponent's end step, or when they go to kill one of your creatures, or you want to respond to a sweeper. That would be cool. So the card does have some limitations on it. And we have that green card, something tree, that you can play stuff from the graveyard already, but that every deck I've put that in, it ends up being one of the first cards cut. So if that lets me play anything effectively from the graveyard, and I'm not really excited about that, I'm not totally sure how I feel about a card that's just letting me play creatures out of the graveyard. So I don't know. Like, it reads really cool. I just don't know how good it really is. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Daniel says free sack outlets could be powerful if there's aristocrats, yeah, totally. Like if that ends up being a type of deck, then like sure, you play it because it's an easy way to sacrifice something for sure. And you get a bonus out of it of drawing a card. So there'd be nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. This card is not common. This card is rare. It is just hard to tell because of the set symbol in the set. You can notice all the rares and mythics at the bottom by just looking for the that sticker down in the bottom. All right. We also have Terror Tide. 2 colorless, black. All creatures get -X, where X is a number of permanent. Like, again, another sweeper. Why? So we have 2 already in this set, and we're not even through, what, 3 colors. Like, I'm not, again, not excited. We need to take a set off from sweepers. Seriously. We are going to have 12 sets in Standard at some point. And there are going to be 2+ sweepers from every one of those sets available in Standard. Practically every color has them in some variety doing something. We do not need any more right now. Like, we could literally take the next 3 sets off from playing sweepers, and we will still have over 20 sweepers available in Standard for the next rotation. Like, we don't need this in our life. I have nothing. Like, is the card playable? Is it a quality sweeper? Yes, it will probably get some play. There's several decks that could use this. But that's about all I can say about it. It's another sweeper. Like, all right, it does its thing. You know, though, maybe that's my problem too. Is sweepers aren't even fun to talk about. And not even because, like, I'm hating just seeing a lot of sweepers, but just, like, from what they do. All right, cool. It's another thing that wipes out creatures. Ta-da! Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even anything that it's... Blah. All right, moving on. Anyway, that's the last black card, as it turns out. So, yeah, we'll be moving on to the red cards. We're going to start the red cards. Oh, wait, I guess I should probably start another recording there, huh? Dude, that'd be smart. Here's the thing, Grim. We already have a lot of sweepers. Period. Like, I don't care about them being important or not. We already have a ton of them. Like, literally, no sweeper in this set is going to be any significant amount better than any of the others we already have. Not saying, like, sure, one works with Descend or whatever, but, like, they're each only going to be incrementally better or worse than the other ones. We already have a ton. We don't need any more. Like, they don't make for better gameplay. They're not adding anything fun to the environment. Like I said, even doing these reviews, they're not even fun to talk about. Like, they're just another card that does a thing that other cards we have, literally 20+ cards we have, already do. Seriously. Like, and I'm not even joking. I did a video a while back when we were still in 2-set Standard or 2-year Standard, and there were already a pile of sweepers. So to, like, keep adding on to that another year plus, we're just going to have more and more and more. Like, there's just piles of them, of so many different varieties. So yeah, like, tons of them. Favorite sweeper? I don't have one. All right. Moving on, we're going to go to the red cards. All right. Bone Horde Dracosaur. This is a 5-mana, 5/5 dinosaur dragon. Flying. First strike. Already good on rate. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You can play them this turn. If you exile a land, you get a 3/1 dinosaur. If you exile a non-land, create a treasure. Yeah, there's literally zero to hate about this card. Like, zero. I mean, I guess maybe it costs 5. That's the downside. But you get a 5/5 first striker, first off. So even the turn you get it, it's a sizable blocker. Can actually block Shieldred effectively, which is great. But you get to exile 2 things. You're either going to make some combination of 2 dinosaurs or treasure. That's pretty cool. And you get to just play extra cards for the turn. Like, what's crazy is it doesn't even replace your draw, right? It just exile the top 2 cards away. So you get access. Like, this is exactly the type of card when we're talking about like not wanting to commit too much to the battlefield because a potential sweeper's coming or whatever. You literally, I understand it's one of each. You get a combination. I said of 2, either or. Like, yeah, I get it. But regardless, it doesn't matter. The card lets you get access to 2 more cards. You still get your draw step. So you get access to 3 cards for the turn, potentially. They're either going to make treasure that make it easier for you to play the cards, or at a minimum, make you a 3/1 dinosaur. And this card's also a dinosaur, so it can go into the dinosaur decks. Like, yeah, this card's great. Like, seriously, this card's awesome. Like, it's just a good beatdown creature. Any of the ramp decks, if you're an aggressive ramp deck, you could play this. You could play this as a top end for like a Gruul aggro type thing. This works in dinosaur decks. This card is just value on top of value. Like, yeah, this card's awesome. Like, I don't have anything negative to say about this card. Yeah, I'm in. This card's good. All right, red's off to a good start. Let's see if this keeps up with our next card. I've seen this one too. This one's Breeches, or as some people pronounce the hard pronunciation, Breeches. Eager Pillager. 2 colorless and a red. 3/3, Goblin Pirate, legendary. First strike. When a pirate you control attacks, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Create a treasure. Target creature can't block this turn. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. Yeah, this card's great too. This card's great. Like, it's a 3/3 for 3 already with first strike. Awesome. Obviously, pirates are going to love playing this card. So it is like the card itself. Even if you just had this just attack, like, you still get to trigger one of these things because it's whenever a pirate. But obviously, if you have a pirate deck, you could potentially get all 3 of these every turn, right? Something can't block, you get a treasure, exile the top card. And it doesn't even care that this creature didn't attack, but it also counts itself if you want it to. So it's not worded like other pirates. It's not worried about when this card attacks, if you attack with other things. Like, this is just a pirate of any kind attacks, trigger one of these things. This card, more than playable. I think this will definitely see some play. Most likely only in pirate decks. However, it is a goblin, and some of the other goblins happen to be pirates. So you could have a goblin deck that plays the 2 pirates that could potentially trigger this. So, yeah. Cool card, though. I'm into it. Next one we have is, making our way down, Dire Flail. 1 red equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. You equip it for 1, or you craft it for 5. Exile this artifact. Exile another artifact you control, or an artifact from your graveyard, and it returns as Dire Blunderbuss. Equipped creature gets +3/+0, and has whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact other than this. When you do, this creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Wow. Okay. So this is interesting. So it's affordable equipment. 1 mana, 1 to equip. Actually good on its own and could actually see some play. So nothing wrong with that. But has an upside of now when you attack, you can sacrifice any other artifact, and now the creature you have deals its power to another creature. It doesn't fight it. It's a bite spell. So just your power, their toughness. The thing about this, though, is in a pirate deck, a lot of pirates are probably going to be producing treasure or care about treasure, and you can sacrifice treasure to trigger this ability. And that's very cool. And the backside also equips for just 1 mana. This very likely gets some play. This is a cool card. How much play, I don't know, but it's super cheap to use, to equip, to cast. The craft ability is a bit pricey, so that's the one thing holding it back. But cool card still. Now, worthy of being a rare, I don't know, but it's pretty cool. What else do we have in here? What is this? This has a lot of words and a high casting cost. Hit the Mother Load. I love the name. 4 and 3 red for a sorcery. Discover 10. To discover 10, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana value 10 or less. So basically, like Cascade of sorts. You cast a card without paying its costs or put it into your hand. If the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. This card is wild, yo. Like, so you pay 7, and then you just flip cards until you get to something that costs less than 10, which is going to be everything in your deck. So let's say you get something that costs 4, then you get your 4 mana thing and 6 treasure. This is kind of cool. I don't know, like, obviously it has to be something we're trying to do. I was literally just about to say that. MTG Beast just said, like, this card in a food fight deck. I was literally just thinking that. It has to be something like that, where you're generating a bunch of treasure, ramping to your payoff, right? But this is what I'm going to try to use. I don't think it's like top tier deck, you know, tier 1, nothing like that. But I think this opens the door for a lot of very fun stuff. If you play commander decks that care about treasure or mana ramp or whatever, obviously this is a card you want to play in those decks. But yeah, this is fun. And it's on theme. It's a bunch of pirates finding this giant pile of treasure. Like, yeah, this is cool. I like this card. This is just a fun Magic card. I'm into this. What do we got here? A legend, it looks like. So we have Inti, Seneschal of the Sun. Colorless and a red for a 2/2 human knight. So if you're still looking for knights, here's an option in red. Also a human, which could matter. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. If you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card until your next instep. Huh. So it attacks, you discard, you get to put a counter no matter what. Actually, it's not even when this card attacks. It's just whenever you attack. You can discard a card. You put a +1/+1 on a thing. That thing gains trample and a +1/+1. And then you get access to the top card of your library. Yeah, this is just good. I'm like reading through it again because there's a lot of stuff going on. But this is actually kind of neat. It can work in a humans deck. It can work in some red something aggro. It can work in, actually this is actually really good in some red aggro decks, because now you just make your attackers bigger with all those junk lands you drew that you don't need. Now your lands possibly become other spells, right? So that's kind of cool. Maybe even in a dinosaur deck could be cool, giving your big dinosaurs trample. Yeah, this is just a cool card. I like it. This is one I think it could be fun to play with. I'm into this. Man, Red's having a good time in this set. Lots of good cards so far. Magmatic Galleon, 3 red for a 5/5. When this card enters the battlefield, it deals 5 to target creature an opponent controls. Whenever 1 or more creatures your opponent controls are dealt excess non-combat damage, create a treasure token. Crew for 2. You know, this is interesting. Like, it's not that exciting as a vehicle, right? Like, but coming into play, dealing 5 to something is pretty cool. Since you only get the treasure for non-combat damage, it's not as exciting. But again, when we're looking for ways to dodge some of all these sweepers that are getting played, this isn't a bad option to have access to, right? Like Sunfall happens or something, or depopulate. And then the next turn, you're like, well, I play a 2/2. I can still crew this big 5/5 and attack. And it happens to be a vehicle, so it's not susceptible to, like, go for the throat. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's great, but it's also not bad. And dealing 5 straight up is pretty good. So, this is, I don't know. This is one that if my opponent plays it against me, I'm not going to turn my nose up at it. It's not terrible. I don't think it's great, but it's at least playable. And I think that's what we're looking for sometimes more than not. Where else are we at here? Trumpeting Carnosaur. So this is our first dinosaur in these reviews we've talked about. So, all right. 4 colorless, red for a 7/6 trampler. When it enters the battlefield, discover 5, which is flip cards from top of your library till you get something 5 or less. And then 2 and a red. You can discard this card, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. All right, this is interesting because one of the problems with dinosaur decks sometimes is that you are having to make a bunch of concessions to squeeze more of the big dinosaurs into your deck. But now, this at least gives you a removal card for a 3 damage removal anyway. I don't hate this card, actually. Like, for 6 mana, you get a 7/6 and something, right? When it comes into play. So that's already fine on its own. You're likely going to get 2 things. And then if it's in your hand early, or you just need to get something out of the way because you're not going to get to the late game to cast this, then you get to kill a creature or a planeswalker, obviously. But I'm into this. Oh yeah, there was the Dino Dragon. That was a dragon. I think about it more as a dragon, but it is a dinosaur also. Yeah, this one I like too. I like because what this brings to dinosaur decks. It gives them a little more versatility where you don't have to be like all in on trying to ramp to just your big things. But if you do get this, even as a top deck card, like this is the type of card that you play this after a sweeper, you get a 7/6 and another body, and you're already back in business. So I like this really well. Like this is a cool card. I'm into this. And I think that does it for the red cards. Awesome. So now we're going to make our way into some green cards. I feel there's going to be a lot of green things to talk about. So yeah, lots of fun stuff. By the way, thank all of you for stopping in on a Saturday or Sunday night. I almost said Saturday night. This is crazy time, but we kind of just did this at the last minute. So I'm glad y'all showed up to the stream. So this is really nice to have you. Between everything, looks like we got about 85 people between all channels. So thank you for that. If you haven't liked this video or subscribed on wherever you're watching me, or joined the memberships or whatever, they're on a bunch of different channels. So please do so. I'd really appreciate it. It helps out. Lets me take more time to do more stuff like this. And I plan to be multi-streaming on multiple platforms, probably twice a week, hopefully going forward. I'm going to cross my fingers, but for sure at least once a week. So this is actually really, really cool to be able to engage with everybody on multiple platforms all at once. Also, welcome, Kyle. I saw you with your comment earlier. Slipped in there from Facebook. So much appreciated. But yeah, it's cool having people on from multiple platforms. Really, really love it. All right. Let's get into the green cards. Dr. Gregorio says, I love your content. Thank you. I love that y'all watch my content because I put out a lot. And if y'all don't watch, I don't get to keep making content. So much appreciated for sure. All right. So we have Bedrock Tortoise, a 4-mana turtle that's a 0/6. As long as it's our turn, creatures you control have hexproof. That's kind of nice. And then each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So it has butt fight. All right, cool. I mean, this is okay. I mean, it's technically like a 6/6 for 4, which is pretty cool. Kind of sad it's not a turtle dinosaur. I think if it was a turtle dinosaur, I'd be more into it, and it'd be a sweet card for the dinosaur decks. But otherwise, it's kind of looking to be in those like decks full of walls and big toughness creatures to do their things. I mean, we have several over the years, some that get played in different formats that like this fits there, obviously. But I will admit, giving your cards hexproof on your turn is a worthwhile ability that's at least worth considering. And even if you're just playing an aggro deck of some kind, say Gruul aggro or something, this is effectively a 4-mana 6/6. I mean, that's still a thing. You know what I mean? Like, can't really be upset at it. And it's only 1 green in its cost. So it's very easy to cast, splashable into a lot of different decks, potentially works with other cards that have bigger toughness. I mean, there's probably going to be several. Sadly, also works with Shieldred. But kind of a cool card. I think this is the type of card that might get overlooked a lot because people are going to like, oh, it's a 0/6, whatever. But it's technically a 6/6 because of its own ability that has an upside to making your stuff hexproof when it's your turn, which is great because it means your opponent has to commit to killing stuff or whatever before you get to an attack or whatever. So yeah, this is pretty cool. It's a type of card you kind of want to dismiss initially, but the more I think about it, this card probably just straight up gets played. I mean, it's a 6/6 for 4. Why not? You know what I mean? Like just go for it. So yeah, this one I'm gonna give a thumbs up to. Mostly because 6/6s are just tough to deal with in general. All right, Cosmium Confluence, a 5 mana sorcery, but it does say choose 3. All right, you may choose the same mode more than once. Search your library for a cave. Okay, this obviously goes with the cave deck, if you will. Search your library for a cave, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle. Put 3+1/+1 counters on a cave you control. It becomes in 0/0, has haste, still a land, destroy target enchantment. This feels like if you're playing the cave deck, great. But if you're not, it doesn't really do much, right? It's an expensive way to kill multiple enchantments. I mean, in a weird way, if you wanted to play this as a sideboard card against the like Selesnya enchantment deck, it's kind of brutal because you get to kill 3 things at once for 5 mana. But outside of that, I don't think this is really what you're playing. All right. So far, green card has a hit and a miss. Oh, yeah. This one I know about. This card, literally, Galta Stampede Tyrant. 8 mana, 12/12, trample, Elder Dinosaur Legend. Enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Like, this card's silly. Like, the thing is, obviously, you want to have other cards in hand, or else the ability doesn't work. However, this card does not say when you cast it. It's when it enters the battlefield. So if it's exiled and you trick it into play with something, if it's in the graveyard and you reanimate it, if you have fight rigging, if you like any way possible you want to trick this into play, this does a ton of different things. This card is really good. Like, imagine fight rigging on 3 or 4, and you get this thing, and then you put 2 other big things into play. Like, the game's almost over on site. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you get this, a Tali, and I don't know, Archfiend of whatever, right? The 6/6 flyer, right? That's it. Like, your opponent literally has to have sweeper then and now, or the game's over. Like, this card is silly. This card is very, very silly. But again, if you get it late, you don't really have anything in hand. It's just a 12. I say just a 12. It's a 12/12 with trample. So it is still hard to deal with. But yeah, cool card though. Cool card. I expect this card to be popular. Definitely with commander players. There's going to be a lot of fun things you could do with this. Just fun all around. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Moving on, we got Growing Rights of Itlabak, which is a reprint. Whenever it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You can reveal a creature card from among them, put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library. Being your instep, if you control 4 or more creatures, you transform this and basically get a Gaia's Cradle. Taps for a green, or you can tap it for a green for each creature you control. So yeah, just a good card. It was already popular before. I believe it was in like the $15-ish range previously. That'll come down some, probably to about $6 or $7. But yeah, still a card people are going to be excited about. People are going to play this in different decks. It lets you get the best creature off the top. If you're playing tokens or whatever, obviously this generates a bunch of mana. Just a fun card, really. Just good, useful card. It's one we already knew, though. I did see this one in preview. So while I don't know most of these cards, I'm seeing for the first time. This one I did see. Hotly Poetic Poet of Unity. By the way, for people who have questioned how to say this card, this was also on the list. And I have been saying this correctly as Watley. So if you're wondering, that is how it's pronounced. Just saying. Okay. So Hotly Poet of Unity, 3 mana for a 2/3 human warrior bard, which is an interesting combination of creature types. Legendary, obviously. Enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Unfortunately, does not put it into play. And then you can pay 5, exile it, return it to the battlefield transformed under opponent's control. It becomes a saga that the first chapter is create 2/3/3 dinosaurs. Chapter 2 is Roar of the Fifth People. Creatures you control have tap for red, a green, or white. Then chapter 3, search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, put it in your hand. Chapter 5, dinosaurs you control gain double strike and trample until end of turn. This is a very tough card to evaluate because it's kind of just a 2/3 for 3 in a lot of cases, right? Because you're not going to have the mana often to flip it when you play it. So you almost want to get this like really late. It's like a card you don't even really want to play on even like turn 5. You want to play it on turn 6+ a lot of the time. But it does let you get extra land, so that's nice. But just 2/3 for 3, If you do get it late, though, the ability to flip it is just worth it on the payoff, right? You get 2 dinosaurs, you get to search for 1, which if you're that late in the game and you flip this, you can probably cast whatever you found, and then your stuff gets double strike. Now, again, because of all the spot removal and sweepers and everything we play, there's a chance the 4th chapter doesn't do anything. But the fact that you get some free creatures, get to search for a creature, lots of upside on this card. And what I've been thinking about this, even from when I first saw it, without seeing all the other dinosaurs, like, would I want to play this in some type of dinosaur deck, which is kind of the intent, obviously. And I don't know what the answer is. I think if I'm playing some version of ramp with dinosaurs, then maybe, right? Because then there's a world where maybe I play this and I flip it and I'm in business immediately. But if not, I may not, truthfully. I don't know if it's what we're really looking for. So this was a hard one to judge. I'm going to give it the halfway thumb. It's not up, it's not down, it's just a halfway. It's a 50%er. Because I don't think this is a card, like, I will say this for the card, though. It doesn't even have to go in a dinosaur deck, right? And I think that's why I'm giving it the 50% thumb. Is it may just find a home in some other deck. That's some green, white humans or something. I don't know, I'm just like pulling something out of thin air here. But it is a human, it fits that style of deck. You get some free creatures on the backside. But ultimately, if you don't have dinosaurs, you really have 2 chapters that do nothing, right? So it's like, if you have a 60th slot and you want to just play an extra human that can potentially get you 2 3/3s, all right, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like a lot of work to not get a lot out of it, unfortunately. All right. More dinosaurs. Hulking Raptor. 2 colorless, red, for a 5/3 with ward. All right, you got my attention. At the beginning of your pre-combat phase, add green. You know what's funny? You know how you kind of read ahead? I was expecting this was going to be pay 2 green during your next turn. This is a 5/3 for 4 with ward and just gives you extra mana. Now, I will admit, 3 toughness is fragile, right? So you're not going to necessarily get to just run this errantly into stuff. But it is hard to kill with the ward 2. And you get 2 extra mana. So if you have 4 mana to play this, you have at least 6 going into your next turn. Possibly 7 if you play a land. This could make it very easy to play a lot of those bigger dinosaurs. This one's going to come down to what the construction of the rest of the deck looks like, right? Do you have stuff that can use 6, 7 mana? If so, then this probably can make the cut in some non-dinosaur decks because it's non-conditional mana. You don't have to spend it on creatures or artifacts or whatever. So just a deck that needs more mana could take advantage of this, honestly. This is kind of cool. It's a weird card in a way, but neat nonetheless. So yeah, I think this is one that's gonna get some play, but how much play I think is gonna come down to what the rest of the format looks like. Moving on to Intrepid Paleontologist. Colorless and a green for a 2/2. Human Druid, tap, add 1 mana of any color. That's always nice. Exile target card from a graveyard. Also really nice. You can cast dinosaur creature spells from among cards you own exiled with this card. If you cast a spell this way, that creature enters the battlefield with finality counter. Oh, okay, I see what we're doing. So it's a 2/2 for 2. You tap for any color mana. You can exile a card from any graveyard, but if you exile some of your own dinosaurs, you can now play your dinosaurs out of the graveyard. Yeah, this is fine. I think this is just a decent card and also gives you the option of ramping up to your dinosaurs with the mana. It can be played in any deck because it gives you any color mana. So if you want to play it in a human-based deck, possible. Especially if you're playing like Naya humans and you think your colors might be an issue. That's a real thing. And just getting to replay dinosaurs is cool. So yeah, just a quality card, really. I mean, there's not a lot to say about this one other than it's a good mana creature with significant upside. Like, even if you're just using it as a card to remove an opponent's graveyard, right? You remove all those reanimator type effects or whatever, you just get rid of all those. Your opponent has underdogs, you can get rid of those. Just like lots of cool stuff you can do with this. It's like, yeah, I'm into this. Let's see. Q says, let you steal opponent's dinos if you exile them. That's true. It says any dinosaurs that you've exiled with that ability. So yeah. Oh no, it's yeah, it just says, oh no, it says among the cards you own that are exiled, not your opponents. So it does actually turn that off. So you don't get to do that. Close though. It has just a couple of words in there that make it where we can't do that. But very cool nonetheless. Let's see. We have Jade Light Spelunker. 1/1 for 1, but it does have an X in the cost. It's a Merfolk Scout. When it enters the battlefield, it explores X times. To have it explore, you reveal the top card of your library. Put that card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature, and then you put the card back or put it on the bottom or put it in your graveyard. Man, this card. I don't know how I feel about this. This feels, if I mean, we know the Merfolk decks are going to be blue, green, some version of that. But I guess if you're playing something that wants to explore, then you definitely play this card, right? Because there's some stuff that like each time a card explores, something happens. If you're playing that type of deck, then yeah, this card's automatically going to be something you play. Likely could still come into play, be like a, I don't know, you play it late game for 3 or 4, maybe it's like a 2/2 or a 3/3. So it's like not a bad thing. It's all right though. I think for the decks that want it, this card's very good. But you have to be really playing to take advantage of the, I would think at least right now, trying to take advantage of the explore ability. If you're not, then it's kind of just an okay card because it doesn't even, if you think about it, it doesn't even necessarily scale 100% correctly. Because if you pay, say, 5, you're not automatically getting a 5/5 creature. You could be getting like a 2/2 creature and some lands in your hand, which is fine. You know, nothing wrong with that, but possible. Or your top card could be a non-land and then you just scry 4 times and you do get a 5/5 or whatever, right? So, I mean, it's a weird card. It's a weird card, but it's probably a lot better than I'm giving it credit for right now. And let's see, what else do we have in green? Oh, again, another one of these, as our pronunciation guide has taught us, is Oare. But Oare Kazlim, Deepest Growth, 5 mana, 6/7 legendary god with trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, you reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or land card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Wow. Whenever this dies, return to the battlefield tapped and okay, first off, 5 mana for a 6/5 trampler, fine. But if it connects, you just get to look at cards from the top of your library, and then any creature or land you just get to put into play. I mean, you get one creature and one land, but like still, that's cool. The backside though is tap for a green, or you pay 3 and tap it, transform this, activate only if 10 or more permanents. Oh, activate if you control 10 or more permanents, and as a sorcery. All right. So it may be hard to flip this back over. You're kind of just connecting once, but even if you don't get to flip it, like this is still good. Like just a 6/5 trampler is a real thing to deal with for 5 mana. Like I think though this is where like 3-year standard becomes a little bit of a problem, right? Because as good as this ability is, there's going to be decks where you have to make a decision of like, are you going to play this, or do you want to play like the green defiler? Because it's a 6/6 also with trample, but then could make other stuff cheaper and pump all your stuff, right? So this is where, as we get more and more sets in standard, some cards that are really good still may get pushed to the wayside because they don't do necessarily enough, or the thing they do may not be as good for the meta as the other thing or whatever. So, while I do like this ability, and I think it's pretty sweet, and I think this is going to be a commander all-star for a lot of people, I don't know about 60 card. I think it's really cool, but realistically, probably we're not going to see a lot of this card, I don't think. However, if there was a card that helps mono green out, getting free creatures and lands is really good. So, got to keep that in mind. It is legendary too, though, which comes with its own problems, obviously. Sentinel of the Nameless City. 3 mana, 3/4. Merfolk Warrior Scout that has Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you create a map token. Maps are you can pay 1, tap and sacrifice them. Target creature you control explores. This seems quality. I mean, it's a 3/4 for 3 with Vigilance. Easy splashable card. It's a sizable body. You get map tokens, so you can just crack those at any time. There's some stuff that cares about map tokens. There's some stuff that cares about stuff going to the graveyard. There's stuff that cares about artifacts entering the battlefield. So this works with all of those things. Obviously, stuff that explores. So yeah, this can fit into a lot of decks. There are a lot of decks that would want the abilities this card is producing. So yeah, this one's pretty cool. Very, like, I don't know, inconspicuous, I guess is the word I would say for this card. But 3/4 for 3 seems solid with Vigilance and huge significant upside on this card. We missed one. Are we excited about this? 3 mana, 6/6. Let's see. It's Pugnacious Hammerskull. It's a dinosaur. Bonus. Whenever it attacks, if you don't control another dinosaur, put a stun counter on it. Yeah, this damn thing's just a boss. Like, I mean, it's just a 6. Even if you just only get to attack every other turn. Like, I'm just a 6/6. That's fine for 3 mana. Sure. Like, understand that right now, you could build a deck, which I'll probably do, that plays this on 3 and the turtle on 4. And your opponent's effectively staring at 2 6/6 creatures on turn 3 and turn 4. That's kind of wild. And all of these also work with fight rigging very easily. Like, we can almost do mono green fight rigging right now. Like, we don't, like, admittedly, you get some other cool cards from the other colors, so you probably want to still have the other colors. But just saying, it's possible you could do it in mono green. So yeah, random, but this thing's big as hell. Like, it's just really big. It's just really ridiculous. This is kind of cool. What do we say? The Scryfall temporary name for that creature is Headlong Bonkosaurus. That's a good description for the artwork. Like, not gonna lie. Like, whoever named it did a good job. More stuff in green. We have the Skull Spore Nexus. Well, I guess, of course, every color is going to have an artifact that does a thing, right? So 8 mana. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Okay, that makes it a lot easier. Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness equal to the total power of those creatures. Nice. You can pay 2 and tap it. Double target creature's power until the end of turn. All right, this is great. Like, what? I was waiting for like the other shoe to drop. Like, and how much do we have to pay to flip this thing or whatever? That's it. So it's some amount less to cast, equal to whatever the biggest creature's power is you have. So let's say generally maybe it's a 4/4. So like this is going to cost you like 4 to cast. And then when you have a creature die, you make a fungus token that's equal to the power of the things that died, which is, let's say, whenever one or more. So yeah, so if you have multiple things die in a combat, let's say a 3/3 and a 2/2, then the fungus comes back as a 5/5. Like, this is kind of cool. And then if you have something that tramples or whatever, just doubling the power until end of turn is actually super sweet, obviously. Yeah, I will be trying to find a home for this card. This is just kind of cool. This is neat. I got nothing to complain about this card. This one also gets a thumbs up. This could be hard to fight against, though, to be honest. Like, if your opponent has some, even if you're, yeah, it says non-token, so that's good. I was just like, I missed that part. So yeah, that's actually really good because it doesn't get too out of hand. You can't just keep like cycling tokens. But yeah, this could be a good one. I like this card. They have to blow removal before your main phase 1. That's fair. Well, I mean, do they have to? It just says whenever a creature dies. It doesn't matter when it dies. I mean, I guess if you're talking about like being able to attack with a thing or doubling a power or something, sure. But like, yeah, this is just a good all-around card. Yeah, I don't have anything negative to say about this. This is a card I expect I will lose some number of games to. And I think we finished up the green cards. So yeah, that's all of them. So now we have a bunch of gold cards to talk about. So we will start here. All right. So getting into the gold cards, we get to start with Abuelo, Ancestral Echo. Colorless, blue, white, 2/2 spirit, flying ward 2. So that's always good. It can protect itself a bit. Ward 2 is awesome. You can pay 3 mana, exile another target creature or artifact you control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. You know what's funny? We already have a blink deck or bounce deck or whatever you want to call it, a blink deck, that already exists in standard, right? That you play something like your Steel Seraph as a 3/3, it comes back into play as a 5/4, right? This is already a thing. This is just an extra copy of, like, you could just play this and then you just have a free run to bounce your stuff. The other fun thing too is this does only say things you control. So you can't get too out of control with it. But the fact that you can use it multiple times in a turn is also really cool. So if you have something, multiple things that you need to remove and then they come back, if you have a bunch of mana, you could also save things from getting exiled. So because it returns them at the beginning of the next end step. So if an exile trigger is going to happen, like, you can save a big thing or two and then they come back during the end step. So that's pretty sweet. So like, lots of interesting little things you can do with this card. It is legendary, so you can't go too crazy. But yeah, just neat. It also says another target creature. So you can't save itself, but being able to save other stuff is still pretty nice. I like this card. I'm into it. Also, the fact that it's named Abuelo and it's a protector of other things, like, kind of fitting. That's very cool. Amalia Benavides Aguilar. Vampire Scout, legend, 2/2 for 2 mana. Not bad. Has ward, pay 3 life. We always like that. Whenever you gain life, this card explores Then destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20. That is strange. I'm trying to think what scenarios are going to occur where this card is going to get to 20 and I've not won already. You know? That's the weird part about this card. Now, just being able to like explore every time you gain life, great. Like this can go into life gain decks, various vampire decks, stuff with lifelink. Obviously, still a good ability. But I almost feel like that extra line of text almost isn't going to matter like better than 99% of the time this card sees play. I mean, I guess you can infinite combo with something. I mean, that's always a thing, but realistically, if I can infinite combo, there's a bunch of ways I can infinite combo. Like, I'm just looking at this card itself and just being like, how often is that other line of text really going to matter? And does it need this line of text, even if it does exist for just one other card combo potential? Like, it feels kind of weird to have that as a design choice. You know what I mean? I mean, even as an EDH card, though, like, I can't think of a lot of scenarios where one card's going to get to 20. I mean, again, I guess if I have something that just can infinite bunch of mana, put a bunch of counters, then ta-da, it kills everything. But even the card doesn't even auto win necessarily. You know what I mean? Because you still have to attack and whatever. Like, I would almost like, and this is weird because I don't think the card's bad. I think it's still totally playable, works fine with a bunch of life gain stuff. Just feels like I would rather it have other text than to just destroy all creatures if it has exactly 20, because it just feels useless a lot of the time, especially in a lot of the decks that this card's going to likely find its way into, because people are going to play it in life gain decks, in vampire aggro decks, right? The second line's almost going to be meaningless. So, not that it makes the card bad, I just wish it had a better line of text. But the card itself, still definitely playable and will get played for sure. Lots of things here. The Ancient One. All right, 2 mana, 8/8. This obviously has to have a downside. Descend 8. The Ancient One can't attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanents in it. There it is. Like, there's the catch. 2 colorless, blue-black. Draw a card, then discard a card. If you discard a card this way, target player mills cards equal to its mana value. Okay, this does something. This is interesting. So you play it just basically almost like an enchantment of sorts. Then you can draw a card and discard, and you're either milling yourself or your opponent, I guess. And then once there are 8 things in your yard, then it just becomes an 8/8 you can fight with. I don't hate this. Like, it's weird because it's susceptible to all the things that kill creatures. It's not like the other gods that are non-creatures until they hit their trigger, right? Because they were all devotion based. So this one's a little weird that it is still susceptible to all of the creature things while effectively not being able to do creature stuff. So that's a little bit of a weird thing because it's a non-creature card, sort of, that is setting up your other cards in your deck, but is susceptible to being disrupted by all the things you would play that would otherwise wipe out creatures. So it's a little weird, but it is a still useful card. It will definitely find a home in a lot of places. Great late game card. Just top decking that and then being able to draw and filter your top draws. So, like, lots of cool stuff you could do with this. It's neat. Weird art, but cool. We have Anam Pakal, 1000th with the TH, 1000th Moon. Colorless red-white for a 1/2 human soldier. Whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on this card, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on this card. This is intriguing. So whenever you attack with any number of not gnomes, you can put a counter on this, and then you make that many gnomes. So what I like about this card is that it doesn't have to attack to trigger itself. It's just when anything else attacks. This could find its way into some type of human or soldier deck for sure. And then you're just building a bigger army around your aggressive creatures. The downside is, though, you are paying 3 mana for a 1/2. Technically, I guess, for a 2/3, because you're probably going to attack with something the turn you play it. And then you're kind of building up a creature you could fight with, but also just being able to build up the other things around it. So I'm kind of into this. This is pretty cool. And it's that same thing where you don't have to dedicate a lot to the board, because whatever you played on turn 1 and 2, you could just attack with those a couple of times to build this up and then get your small gnome army or whatever if you wanted to do that. But yeah, I don't know. This is another one. I want it to be better than it is, but I'm really concerned with spending 3 mana for a 1/2. Right? Like 3 mana for a 1/2 that I guess in most cases will make at least 1/1/1. So I mean, maybe you're playing 3 mana for a 1/2 and a 1/1, which makes it feel a little bit better. But it also has to get to your attack step, so that's a whole thing. But yeah, man, I want this card to be good, and I want to lose to this card. Like, I want somebody to do something really crazy, or even just like triggers off a bunch of artifacts coming into play because you attack, something crazy with this card. I would be totally okay losing to that, honestly. But as is, I think it's just okay. What do we got here? Another ship. Lots of ships in this set. The Belligerents. 2 colorless, red and a white for 5/5. It's a vehicle. Cruise for 3. Whenever the Belligerent attacks, create a treasure. Until end of turn, you can look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. Huh. This doesn't feel as exciting as the other vehicles we've talked about so far in these reviews. 4 mana for a 5/5. It doesn't do anything when it comes into play, like the others do. It creates a treasure, which is nice, and can make it easier to play the cards on top. It also has a higher crew cost of 3. I mean, I guess if there's some pirate creature deck that really cares about treasure and whatnot, then this probably can make the cut. But I'm not excited about, like, the other ships I felt way more interested in. Like, they have more immediate game impact. They're cheaper to crew. Like, just lots of other benefits. Maybe just getting to play that extra spell at the top will be enough to make it worth it. I mean, it's very possible that that's true. And maybe it is, and I'm totally wrong here. But as it stands, I'm not super excited about it. Not compared to the others. You know. What else do we have here? Deep Fathom Echo. 2 colors, green, blue for a 4/4 Merfolk Spirit. At the beginning of a combat on your turn, Deep Fathom Echo explores. Oh, just straight up explores. All right. You may then you may have it become a copy of another creature you control until end of turn. Oh, cool. So it's a 4/4 for 4 that at the beginning of combat is gonna explore no matter what, and then it can copy something else. Huh. You know, this is kind of a cool card. Like, it's weird because it's very simple in the fact that it's a 4/4 for 4, but then it's just all upside, right? You get to scry or explore every turn. So you're either going to put a land into your hand or put a +1/+1 and then get the better of, decide if you want that card or not. But then if you have a better creature, you just copy that, or something else that triggers when it attacks, right? You can copy that. So, like, yeah, this one's cool. I don't know where this goes, other than obviously the deck that wants to explore a lot. But yeah, it's just a cool card. Yeah, this one gets a thumbs up. I mean, at the very least, the explore decks will want this card. And it's a Merfolk Spirit too. So the Merfolk decks, obviously. Right? Oh, Gashath, Sun's Avatar. Sure. 5, a red, a green, and a white. So 8 mana for a 7/6. Vigilant, Trample, Haste. Whenever it deals combat damage, reveal that many cards from top of your library, put any number of dinosaurs into play. Obviously, this card's good. It's been people's commander for years. It's just one of those things. Like, if your opponent connects with this, you're in trouble, right? Now, I will say, I have played against somebody in commander and had them hit 0 and had somebody else hit 1. So it's possible. In 60 cards Magic, though, very unlikely if your opponent's playing or if you're playing a dinosaur deck that you're not going to hit at least 2 things out of those cards. But yeah, just really, really good stuff. And it's haste for 7. So I mean, you're ready to bang right after something bad happens, rebuild that board in 1 hit, right? So very cool card. Not a lot to say about this one. It's existed before. It's a reprint, but just an all-around good card for sure. And I guess oddly, this sort of counts with the gold cards because it's multicolor, I guess. Kellen, Daring Traveler. Is this the same Kellen that was the red card with Adventure from the last set? I think it's the same character. Colorless and a white for a 2/3. When Kellen, Daring Traveler, attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card with mana value 3 or less, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you put it into your graveyard. Has a adventure side, which is Journey On. For 1 green, you create X map tokens where X is 1 plus the number of opponents who control an artifact. So you're going to make at least 1 map token. Or in a one-on-one game, possibly 2 map tokens. But you have to attack with this to get other things off the top of your... I don't know what deck really wants this. Like, it's cool to be able to make the map tokens, or if you want stuff that comes into play to create artifacts, that's kind of cool. That trigger from artifacts entering the battlefield. But it's such a small creature to attack with to maybe get something else. Maybe you're mostly playing this in a green-white humans deck, and then you're just getting the benefit of getting the map tokens to scry, or I mean, keep saying scry. It's kind of like scry, but explore. Or you just attack with it as a 2/3 body, and you maybe get another creature into your hand, because a lot of the white aggro decks or green-white aggro decks right now are playing mostly cheap creatures. So very likely you hit something. So like, yeah, I don't know. It's a fine card. If not exciting, it's just kind of okay. You know? Do we have it? We still have more, definitely more rares here. Molten Collapse. A green and a black for a green and black, a red and a black for a sorcery. Choose 1. If you descend this turn, you may choose both. Or if you've already descended this turn, you may choose both instead. Basically, if a permanent went to your graveyard in any way, shape, or form, you get to destroy target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So you, no matter what, get to destroy a creature or a planeswalker for 2 mana as a sorcery, or you get to destroy a non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. Or you get to do both if something went to your graveyard. This is just solid all the way around. I don't think there's anything to really complain about on this card. Like, you get to kill a creature or a planeswalker for 2 mana. This is fine. Like, Superstar, probably not, but the flexibility it gives you is actually more than acceptable. Like, sure, it's a sorcery, but getting your choice of creature or planeswalker and possible upside of getting to kill a second thing is actually not terrible. Because we're going to have some stuff that are going to be artifacts, treasure, whatever that you may want to kill. So, like, maybe in older formats, this also has a bigger value as well. Because there's different things you can sacrifice to send to your graveyard. And then there's a lot of 0, 1, and 2 mana things older formats play that you kill stuff too. So in those situations, 2 mana to be like, you fetch a land, right? You use one of the fetch lands. That goes to your graveyard. So now you've descended. You have your 2 mana. You possibly get to kill multiple things on the opposing side. Like, that's not bad. It doesn't get to kill creature tokens because it has to be target non-creature, non-land. However, if it's a non-creature token, you would get to destroy that. So, yeah, this isn't bad. I think it reads funny, but it actually has pretty big upside and might have bigger upside for older formats. This is our Planeswalker for the set, Quintorius Khan. Like, so far, every version of Quintorius has just not been good enough So let's see if the Planeswalker is. 3 colorless, red-white for 4 loyalty. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, this card deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. All right, so it works with adventures and stuff, obviously. +1, create a 3/2 red-white spirit creature token, which doesn't fly, but it's a 3/2 spirit. -3 to discover, which basically lets you flip until you find something that costs 4 or less. Or you can -6, exile any number of target cards from a graveyard, and then you add a red mana for each card exiled this way, and then you may play those cards. This at least has real stuff going on, right? You can, at worst, you're paying 5, getting a 5 loyalty Planeswalker and a 3/2 creature. Not stellar, but not bad. Then, if you end up exiling a graveyard later, 2 turns from then, you get access to all those cards, and you get red mana for each of those cards. So there's some upside here. I don't hate this. This works with a lot of different cards and a lot of different decks. This is pretty cool. I'm okay with this card. Like, is it a stellar Planeswalker? No. But it does fit a couple of different builds. Anything caring about you playing stuff from out of your hand, out of exile, that all is good. If you're playing anything that cares about discover, that might be a thing. So, like, yeah, I'm into this. This is fine. Yeah, Mitch says it has to go with the Pia deck. Like, exactly the type of deck I'm thinking of, right? Where you want to be playing stuff that's not with card not in your hand, you know. So yeah, I'm good with this. And the ability to just basically drain your opponent every time you're playing one of those things. That's pretty cool too. If you want to get real outside the box, there's probably some crazy Mardu control variant you can play with this and Ashiok, and then Ashiok's exiling things, and then you're draining the opponent, and then making extra creatures to block with, and right, there's a lot of different things you could do. So I'm sure there's some outside of the box stuff if you really want to get deep in the woods. But yeah, this at least feels better than the other Quintorius cards we've had so far. And we got another Saheeli. Saheeli, the Sun's Brilliance. 2 mana, so red, blue for a 2/2. Human Artificer, legendary creature. Red and blue, tap it. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature or artifact you control. Except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, sacrifices at the beginning of the next end step. So basically another version of what a lot of the Saheeli stuff can do. But you make a token, copies any other artifact or creature you control. This is probably just solid in general, right? Anything that has an enter the battlefield trigger is cool. Anything that pumps your other creatures or whatever is going to be neat. So there's lots of cool stuff you could do with this. There's a few decks I could think, or even just copying certain artifacts that have triggered abilities would be fine, right? It's a small creature, 2/2 for 2, so, you know, obviously susceptible to everything. But the upside is actually pretty high on this. So I don't mind that at all. Sovereign, oh, this is another one I have to consult our pronunciation sheet, because this one was definitely in there. Because I pronounced, oh, it's Ohau. That's Okinek Ohau is how you say this. All right. So Sovereign Okinek Ohau. Because for some reason I thought I had that wrong when I said it previously, but that is what that is. It is 4 mana, so 2 green white for a 3/4. Cat Noble legendary creature, Ward 2, which again, we like Ward 2 because it's hard to kill things. Whenever this card attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to its difference. Okay, so this reads weird, but to clarify what this does, if you have a 2/2 that has a +1/+1 counter on it, when you attack, that will get an additional +1/+1 counter, because the difference of 3 minus 2, which is its base power, is the number of counters you get. On the next turn, because you'll be attacking now with a 4/4, it will be 4 minus 2 is 2, so it gets 2 additional counters, basically doubling your counters every turn. Or if you have something increasing your creature's power and toughness, just in general, it gets bigger, and then you just keep doubling counters after that. So that's how what this card means when you read it. It's a lot of weird words, but that's what it's trying to say. It's written in very particular Magic speak, but that is what it does. Now, this card's actually really cool that you can play it in the +1/+1 counters deck. Obviously, you can play it in any type of just aggro deck that has anything that's pumping your creatures. Like if you have the white adversary that's pumping your team, and then you play this in attack, that counts. Right? So everything's got an extra +1/+2. Well, now they're attacking, they're getting that again, right? So that's pretty big. So like lots of cool stuff you can do with this card. This is going to lead to a lot of dead opponents sometimes on one big attack step. This is going to break parity and attack steps. Also, it's not giving you plus power. It's giving you a +1/+1 counter. So it's increasing your toughness as well, making it harder for your opponent to block effectively. So yeah, really, really cool card. I will say this though. It does say whenever this card attacks. So it's not just on a regular attack. So your opponent still has a turn to get rid of this, unless obviously you have something that gives it haste or whatever. But generally speaking, your opponent will have a turn to deal with your board or this card before it gets to do its crazy thing. But yeah, really, really cool stuff. I like this card. I do have a commander deck that this is going to go in nearly instantly too. So not upset about this card at all. What else do we have left? We have quite a few things still. Okay. Squirming Emergence. This is a really cool piece of art. Is that like a squid or something? Octopus living inside of a skull? Like, that's weird. But anyway, it's a colorless black-green sorcery. Return to the battlefield. Target non-land permanent card in your graveyard with mana value less than or equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Okay, so it's just a reanimator spell that returns something less than the number of permanents you have in your graveyard. All right. I mean, it's good, but not crazy. What I like about it, though, is it is only 3 mana, right? Whereas, because I was going to say, like, we have a bunch of reanimator type cards right now in black and green, but that does make a difference. If you're doing some type of self-mill stuff or whatever, being able to get something back for just 3 mana is pretty sweet. Because, like, consider the fact of the self-mill decks are wanting to play, like, Somnophage and the Lurgoyf and stuff like that. Those only cost 2. So pretty much anytime you have any number of things in your graveyard, you can play this and then get one of those back on the cheap. So it's actually pretty cool. Not a lot of decks you probably want this in, but the decks you do want it, it's going to be a really good card. Vito. Oh, we remember Vito from, what was it? Corset 2020, maybe? When Vito was around, maybe 2019. But Vito, Fanatic of Aquazot, is 2 colorless, white, black, 4/4 vampire demon with flying. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, you gain 2 life if it's the first time this ability resolved this turn. If it's the second time, each opponent loses 2 life. And if it's the third time, create a 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. Cool. Yeah. Nothing wrong with this. I mean, I don't know how many things you're going to have that sacrifice stuff, but if you're playing vampires, it's the upper end. You know, it's a 4/4 flyer. Nothing wrong with that. If you have any things that are efficient and letting you sacrifice stuff, then you get to gain life or drain your opponent. So that's cool. Don't know how often you're going to sacrifice 3 things in a turn and get a vampire demon, but cool to just have that option as upside. So like, yeah, just a good card. I don't know how often in 60 card, maybe in Commander, but normally in 60 card decks, you're going to get to use that ability to its fullest. But even just gaining a couple, your opponent loses a couple, probably still fine if this thing's surviving and attacking as a 4/4 flyer anyway. Whale of the Forgotten. Blue and a black. Descend to 8. You choose 1. If there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard, as you cast a spell, you choose 1 or more. So at its basic, you will get to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Target opponent discards a card. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Yeah, this card's good. Like, just the versatility of being able to bounce a thing, make somebody discard, or get your best card of your top 3. And you get to fill the graveyard. So you're going to make it easier for your other stuff with Descend or whatever to trigger. Like, if you're playing a Descend deck, obviously this is going to be great in there. This could just be a decent mid-rangey blue-black card that has real upside. I don't think the discard is really super significant, except for in rare situations. But if you're just getting to choose it for free, you just take that option, you know. And it's cheap. It is a sorcery, but it kind of probably has to be, since there's a chance you're going to be getting 3 really good things off of it. So, like, yeah, good card, not crazy, but very good quality in general. And it also can end up being the type of card that, because stuff, and we're going to talk about, like, Cavern of Souls, I've seen it previewed already, like, becomes harder to counter things. Maybe decks are going to shift to wanting to bounce more things and control a lot of cards that may be getting +1/+1 counters or any of that type of stuff. So, yeah, depending on the meta, this card could end up being even better. And that is all the gold cards. So that's actually pretty sweet. Don't hate that. Good stuff. Let's take a look at... do we have let's do artifacts and lands together, I think is what we're going to do. And that should wrap things up. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to cover all of these in one big chunk. So, to start with, the first artifact. Chimmel the Inner Sun. Is Chimmel... am I probably pronouncing... is that even on the list? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, too. Chimil. Okay, that makes sense. So I was saying it wrong. There you go. See, that's why I'm glad I have this pronunciation guide. Chimil the Inner Sun. 6 colorless. For a legendary artifact. Spells you control can't be countered. Awesome. At the beginning of your end step, discover 5. Whoa. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, just getting a free card that costs 5 or less every turn. This card's going to end up being a ton of money. Like, this is going to, like, a bunch of commander decks are going to want this card. Seriously. Like, this card's really good. Even as a one of in, like, 60 card Magic. It's just like, you know what? In Standard, like, you dealt with all my stuff. Here's this artifact. We'll see what we hit on the next few turns. And it doesn't replace any of your other draws. These are all things that just come in at the end of your turn. So you get your regular draw step, like your turn's normal, just at the end of turn, you get a bonus card. Yeah, this is great. Like, what a way to start with artifacts, because that's good. What else do we got? Let's go with... oh my gosh, please tell me this is in there. It is. It's Motzal Antli. Motzal Antli. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Motzal Antli, the Great Door. 3 colorless, legendary artifact. Draw a card, then discard a card. Pay 4 and tap it to transform this. Activate only if there are 4 more permanent types among cards in your graveyard. And it turns into the Core. Add X mana of 1 color, where X is the number of permanents in your graveyard. Yeah. I mean, drawing and discarding is cool. You have to kind of fill up the graveyard a little bit and get to flip it, but then you get extra mana. There's probably something busted somebody's going to do with this, but I'm not as excited about this as I am some of the other cards we've seen of this set so far. It's not bad, but it feels like it takes a lot of work to get the good side out of it. And that's assuming it doesn't get destroyed or whatever, kind of along the way. The Millennial Calendar. For 1 mana, it's a legendary artifact. Whenever you tap or untap more permanents, or 1 or more permanents. No, it's just whenever you untap 1 or more permanents during your untap step, put that many time counters on the calendar. You can pay 2 and tap it to double the number of time counters on the calendar. When there are 1,000 or more time counters on the calendar, sacrifice it, and each opponent loses 1,000 life. This is... what are we doing with this card? Seriously. Like, I mean, it's cute, and I get what we're trying to do. It's millennial, 1,000. But, like, I mean, okay, let's say I'm playing some token deck and I have like 6 or 7 tokens, right? So I attack, next turn I play the Millennial Calendar. I untap, I'm putting let's say 6 counters on this thing. I mean, I guess it counts all permanents. So I guess I could just tap lands for nothing just to untap them. So maybe you're putting like 7, 10 counters on this thing. And then you pay 2 and tap it. So he goes to 20. I mean, I guess it's possible you could get it to 1,000 without a ton of work. I mean, obviously, this has to sit on the battlefield for probably like at least 5 or 6 turns to get you there. But it's doable. It's kind of crazy, but it's possible. It's wild. I don't know if that's going to be like, if you just want to have a different win condition, sure. I'm not going to call this card good, but it is possible to do what it's trying to do at least. It's just kind of crazy, but interesting nonetheless. Mitch Winner for $1 super chat. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Before I wrap up, I'm going to have to give some shout outs to people on Twitch as well, because it looks like we've had a few people come in and like some things. And like Shane's birthday tweet, resubscribe. Thank you so much there. So like lots of stuff going down today. Much appreciate y'all hanging out with me on this fine Sunday afternoon. But let's move on from the Millennial Calendar. And let's take a look at Tarian Soul Cleaver. That's a very pretty piece of art. 1 mana equipment, legendary artifact. Creature has vigilance. Whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on an equipped creature. Wow. Equipped for 2. You know, if you're playing something with treasure, this could be really good. Another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard. So even like token decks are going to like this. Whew, this is a strong card. This is a strong card. I dig this. I'm into it. Old Nabianai says, when you get it to 20 counters, it would take 6 turns. Well, yeah, but you also have to remember, you're still untapping stuff every turn. We're talking about the Millennial Calendar. But like, you're still untapping stuff and adding more counters. So your math won't be linear. It's going to get really weird every turn. But yeah, fun stuff. This is a cool thing. I'm into this. We have Threefold Thunderhulk. 7 mana for a gnome. It enters with 3 counters on it, so you'll get a 3/3. Whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, you create a number of +1/+1. Oh no, number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. Then you can sacrifice another artifact to put a +1/+1 on this card. So pay 7. You get a 3/3, and then you get 3 gnomes, right? Whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1s. All right. So you get this. So you get a 3/3 and 3 1/1s. You can pay 2 to sacrifice a 1/1. Well, I mean, I guess technically on the next turn, you could just pay 6 and sacrifice all 3 of the gnomes you made. Turn this into a 6/6. Then you attack. You make 6 more gnomes. So this is just a gnome machine in and of itself. It's literally like, get your dudes. Then every time this attacks, you just get a bigger. It's like it's reassembling into bigger dudes and then breaking down into more dudes, or more stuff's coming out and then just piling up on the Thunderhulk or whatever. But yeah, this is a weird card, but it's like a 1-card army, which is kind of cool. Weird, but cool. I don't know how often I would play it. You know, paying 7 to get 6/6 worth of power is actually not terrible spread across 4 bodies, but I kind of going to have to think about this a bit more. But if you have things, again, that care about artifacts coming into play, things going to the graveyard, whatever, this card could be checking those boxes for you. So something to think about. We have the Throne of the Grim Captain. 2 colorless for a legendary artifact. Tap it, mill 2 cards. You craft with a dinosaur or merfolk, a pirate, and a vampire. So one of each of the major types. And you get the Grim Captain himself. Legendary creature, skeleton, spirit, pirate. It's a 7/7 with menace, trample, lifelink, hexproof. Whenever this attacks, each opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent. Then you may put an exiled creature card used to craft this onto the battlefield under your control, tapped and attacking. Weird. All right, so you'd have to build something, first off, that cares about having a dinosaur, a merfolk, a pirate, vampire, either in play or in the graveyard. Then you get the thing on the backside, which is nice because it does have hexproof, and it only costs 4 mana, so that's pretty cool. Does have lifelink, trample, menace, that's all good. And then anything you sacrificed, you get to put one of those into play as well, and your opponent loses it. There's a lot going on with this card, and it doesn't feel great. I'm not going to lie to you. This feels like this takes way too much work in the deck building phase to make this work. Now, that being said, maybe there is a world where there's like 2 or 3 playable dinosaurs that don't care about other dinosaurs, and 2 or 3 merfolk that don't care about other merfolk, or whatever, right? And if they're just good cards independently, maybe you can build a deck around that and play like 3 copies of this. But without that, I think it's going to be very difficult. Oh, thank you, Mitch Winter, for becoming a new YouTube member. Much appreciated. Yeah, but I'm giving this one a thumbs down just because it feels like even if this becomes somewhat playable, there's probably only one deck it works in, and it would have to be a very specific combination of creatures to make that worthwhile. And we have Treasure Map, which is also a reprint. So it's an artifact. You can pay 1, tap it, scry, put a landmark counter on Treasure Map. If there are 3 or more, you remove those counters and you transform it. And the backside is tap to add a colorless, or sacrifice a treasure, draw a card. Obviously, this fits several different types of decks, just getting to scry every turn, getting to use treasure for stuff. Like, nothing really to complain about there. Also, I forgot, it does generate 3 treasure of its own when you transform it. What else do we got? Cavern of Souls. This card, just good. The set is based around 4 creature types, but we do have other creature types that are still standard legal that'll want this card. This card's been good in Magic for a long time. It's going to continue to be good. It's going to bring the price down because I believe these were going for something like $50 or something. They're going to come down to probably around $25, $30, so that's great. Card's just solid. You choose a creature type. Whenever you cast something, if you use mana from this, the card can't be countered. If you're worried about the mono blue control decks you've been seeing, or the Azorius control countering your early creatures so you can't get on board, if you're playing a creature themed deck, get your 4 Cavern of Souls. There you go. Not a lot to say about it. The card just has a strong pedigree that's been good, going to continue to be good. We'll get to our next card here in a second, once the page catches up with me. Oh, goodness. Uh-oh, I think, did Scryfall break on me? It might have, y'all. All right, well, we're going to be stuck here for a second till the site catches up. I don't know what happened. In the meantime, let me give some shout outs to people over on Twitch. I gave a shout out just earlier there. Chuck Noblocks also resubscribed for 1 month. Thank you so much. We got a subscription from Oneculus, which is cool. Thank you for that. Browser Cooper also resubscribed. Thank you. I think we have a shout out to Shane's birthday tweet earlier. Candyman309 also resubscribed for 7 months. Thank you for that. There was a hype train I missed. I'm glad y'all got some stuff on the hype train there. Old Napkin Eye also resubscribed. Restarted their 1 month there for a tier 1 sub. Thank you. And Vulo gave away 5 community subs. So thank you so much for that. Y'all have been active enjoying this stream. So thank you so much. much appreciated. All right. So continuing on here with Echoing Deeps. It's a cave. Caves are a thing in this set. So you may have Echoing Deep enter the battlefield tapped as a copy of any land card in a graveyard, except it's a cave, in addition to its other types. The interesting thing about this card is it does enter as a copy of any land in a graveyard, not just yours. So if your opponent has, I don't know, in an older format, something like, trying to think of something like Wasteland or something, right? Like you could copy that and then be able to destroy something or whatever. So some cool things you could do with this. Probably going to be much better than I think it is, but it's not bad. Being able to copy a land, especially if you have lands of your own that you're sacrificing and drawing cards and doing stuff with, like, could be very useful. Like, hard to complain about this type of card for sure. What else do we have here in the way of lands? A lot of little like useful lands. Oh, we did get these. There's a whole cycle of these. So we're finishing the 2-color cycles. We had enemy colors before. Now we're getting all the friendly colors of creature lands. So Restless Anchorage, which, by the way, I saw the artwork from a couple of these where they all have the animal that they make in the artwork, which is pretty cool. So here you get to tap for a blue or white, and you pay 3. It becomes a 2/3 white and blue bird creature token, or white and blue bird creature with flying, and it's still a land. Whenever it attacks, you get to make a map token. Not a lot to say about it. It's just good. It'll get played. It has a cheap activation, which is really nice. Always can appreciate that. Restless Prairie, same thing, but it's green. However, it does make a llama, which is really funny. 3/3 green-white llama creature token. It's still a land. When it attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Very cool for like any type of go wide deck. You want to pump all your creatures when you attack. Pretty cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't turn itself into a 4/4. It says other creatures, but that's fine. It is 4 to activate, though, so it's a little bit pricey compared to some of the other ones. But not this one, because Restless Reef taps for blue or black. You can pay 4 till end of turn. It becomes a 4/4 shark, which is pretty cool. I was like, can you see the shark? But yeah, the shark's there kind of in the back hanging out. Turns into a shark with Death Touch, and whenever it attacks, target player mills 4 cards, which is cool because, again, you could mill yourself for any of the stuff that cares about having stuff go to your graveyard, which is pretty nice. So, like that one. Restless Ridge. This is one I think that if there was a deck that needed one of these the most, it's probably the Gruul aggro decks because they didn't have a real option. But this taps red or green, pay 4. It becomes a 3/4 dinosaur creature, which is cool because if you have stuff that cares about dinosaurs. Also, sweet art. Looks like the dinosaur's like sleeping over a mountain. And whenever this attacks, another target creature gets +2 until end of turn, and you get to untap that creature. So that's also very cool too. Unfortunately, it says another attacking creature, so not just another creature. So not as exciting as the other lands. I'll admit, I think the other lands have better abilities attached to them, where you're like making the map token or you're milling stuff or whatever. This is giving one other thing +2/+0. Could matter if it's stuff that tramples or whatever, possibly. It is a 3/4, not a 4/4. A little bit of a letdown, but still fine. But I think for the deck that wants it, this is actually an okay card. And getting to untap a creature is pretty sweet because you can also block with something. And then Restless Vents. Taps for black or red, only activates for 3. Becomes a 2/3 black and red insect creature with Menace. That's still a land. And when it attacks, you can discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This one's actually really cool. For the hyper aggro decks that are just emptying their hand, or even stuff that gets later in the game, you just get to filter those cards out, find a better card on top. Like, I dig it. It's pretty cool. And is that all the rare? No, there's one more rare land, actually. Sunken Citadel. Enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters, choose a color. Add 1 mana of the chosen color. Or you can tap 1, add 2 mana of the chosen color. Spend that mana only to activate abilities of land sources. So if you have other lands that need stuff, this is actually not too bad. This is obviously a filler card for some very specific decks, trying to activate caves, do all that type of stuff. But yeah, not a bad card. Just won't see a ton of play, I wouldn't imagine, because it's kind of made for a very specific type of deck. But wow. Oh, yeah. Also, if we hadn't seen these, I'm just going to put them up for a second. Just these really different basic land cards. I think we have too many full art lands, but I don't mind when they're doing stuff like this that's completely different, especially when we're talking like the lands from Kamigawa that look like the wood block art or whatever. you know, something like this, I think, makes them stand out a lot more. So I'm a big fan of these. Like, they just look almost like true artwork more than actual lands, you know. But I do like how these are done. I think it's worth bringing these up just so people can see them real quick. If you're not familiar with these, I think they're just a really cool series of lands. I don't know if I'll play with them or not, but I do like them visually. I think if we're going to do full art lands, keep doing them like this, where they just look so different and just, I don't know, more evocative of what you're trying to do. I just think that's a big thing. But yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot to cover. I don't even know how long we've been streaming. It's probably been forever. We've been in not too bad. It's only been 2 hours. So that we did okay. We did okay. But yeah, I think the set overall is actually very cool. I think there's a lot of really different things we're going to get to do. I think we open up to a lot of different deck types that didn't necessarily exist before. So that's very cool. Yeah, just all around, I think there's a lot of fun stuff here. I think we're going to have a fun time. I think Ixalan, or not Ixalan, but Eldraine did bring a lot of new stuff to Standard, and the decks did start to look different and change the way they were playing, and that was good. And I think this is going to do a lot of the same. The theme decks, creature decks, are just going to get better, right? Obviously, because stuff like dinosaurs and vampires. Well, vampires get an upgrade because there's already a bunch of vampires, which is awesome. But merfolk weren't really a thing. Pirates weren't really a thing. So we're going to introduce 3 new deck types effectively at a minimum. There's also the caves. There's also the weird artifact stuff. There's the sin decks, which are going to be a whole thing. So at least 5 or 6 new deck types right off the top you can think of that, I mean, pretty much everybody's probably going to try to build in some way. But it's cool that we're introducing all those to just have a bit of variety. And all the stuff that exists, each of those gets 1 or 2 parts, right? This is actually not a bad thing. I think this is actually very good. I think the concern we had when we went to 3-year Standard was everything going to be okay, right? Were we just going to be staring at exactly the same decks forever? But so far, now admittedly, we're only going to be a couple of sets in, but so far that hadn't been the case. Ixalan Eldraine shook up stuff enough that while some of the decks that did exist were still around, there were new things and old stuff played differently, which is good. And I think if we get that again here, that'd be a really good sign, because we're still going to have to get through 3 more Standard sets before rotation. So, you know, we still have a long ways to go before we're going to get any, and even then we're only losing 4 sets, right? Because we're going to keep 3 years worth of Standard available. So this is a good sign. It's a good sign. I think this is all very good. But I think this is where we're going to wrap things up. Gonna chop all these up. If you missed any of this, if you just want to see certain colors, certain types, I will have those up on the YouTube channel soon. If you haven't liked the video, please do so, because that helps other people see it. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, obviously, wherever you're watching me, whether that's on Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. I love y'all. Please, any of your support is always appreciated. But as I always say, wherever you're watching, whenever you're watching, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves and your family. Remember to be awesome, and most importantly, be awesome to each other.